court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6 and I'm Mike Graham, and it is a beautiful week. We did say on Monday this is going to be an amazing week. The weather is going to be fantastic. The sun is going to be up. We had some kind of a flower moon last night. I don't know if you saw that. But apparently, according to some of the pictures in the papers this morning, it was really something to see. Huge, great big sort of ball of red in the sky, and apparently it's got something to do with the flowers blooming. I don't know, don't ask me. But we've got plenty to talk about this morning. Theo Usherwood's here. Theo, very good morning to you. The big story of the morning for me is in the Daily Telegraph. Hostile state linked to Starmer firebombs, right? So here's a guy, a suspect, a man of 21 years who has apparently got some kind of grudge, they say, against Keir Starmer. But the introduction to this story, or the intro as we like to call it, counter-terrorism police are investigating the possibility that a hostile state may have been behind the arson attacks against the Prime Minister. Now, there are many hostile states. It could be China, it could be Russia, it could be Iran, it could be, I don't know, any number of states in the Middle East, Syria, it could be ISIS-related, I don't know. Here's what I'm going to say to you, because one thing that I do know is that the police are refusing to identify the nationality of the assailant. So the firebomber who picked very, very carefully a property that Keir Starmer still owns, which is currently being occupied by his sister-in-law, a car that he used to own, which he's now sold to a neighbour, firebombed that, and another property where he used to live with a previous girlfriend, so presumably some time ago, which is linked to Starmer in some way on Companies House documents, right? So he's gone to all the trouble of finding these addresses, finding a car that belongs to the Prime Minister, and setting fire to all three in various different ways, causing quite a bit of damage. We're not being told what the nationality is of the suspect. Now, I'm going to put it to you that there's a pretty good chance that this character may be an asylum seeker. Now, of course, that would mean the government would be incredibly embarrassed. It would mean that the security services would be incredibly embarrassed, and it would mean another nail in the coffin for the migration policy of this government, which, of course, is still very much under the investigation of Labour Party types and lefties all around the place, because they're all very unhappy that Keir Starmer has suddenly turned into Enoch Powell. Now, I know, obviously, you and I know he hasn't turned into Enoch Powell. There are some people who are listening to this show probably think it'd be a good thing if he turned into Enoch Powell. The fact is that there are some people in the Labour Party who are absolutely horrified by the fact that he's turned into Enoch Powell, by mentioning in his speech that people don't recognise England and Britain anymore because it is a land full of strangers, which is curiously very similar to a speech once made by Enoch Powell. So we'll be getting into all of that. We'll be talking about immigration. Of course, it's now the biggest issue in Britain. We've been telling you it's the biggest issue in Britain for years. Nobody believed us. But now we know the truth because there's a YouGov poll out which says actually more than 53% of people agree with Keir Starmer when he says immigration must be cut in this country, and it must be cut considerably and very importantly. 0344 499 1000. Lots of other stuff going on, including the fact that Starmer's now preparing to sell out the fishing industry and that they've hired more civil servants than ever. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Now, it might sound like there's an awful lot of information in that particular opening salvo, but Theo Usherwood's here. Theo, what do you make of my theory? It feels to me like every time the government refuses to tell you something, or every time the police investigating a case refuse to tell you something, there's a problem, isn't there?
They've got to look at these rules about what they say at the time of arrest, and once we know what details they know. And it doesn't have to be the whole case, but there needs to be more transparency. You just can't. We've had this before. We can't have this situation where information, critical information that is of public concern, in the public interest, is simply held back.
Not least for the people who live quite near where Keir Starmer's house is, who were terrified by some character setting fire to it.
Yeah, and they want to know exactly what they're facing, right? They want to know exactly, what the threat is and what the threat to their street is. And I think also other MPs want to know what significant threats they're facing, because what's interesting in the statement that came out yesterday is that the commander, Dominic Murphy, who is recently issued...
These are the counter-terrorism people,
counter-terrorism people. They just said, urging MPs, if they have any concerns, to get in touch.
Oh, okay.
Concerns about what exactly? Right. What are they supposed to be looking out for? Right. What are they supposed to be worried about exactly?
Well, have you spotted anyone with a Molotov cocktail standing at the end of the road?
Well, But that's the problem, Mike. That if you have this situation where critical, key information is being held back, then it's not helpful to the public, and the speculation can run.
And what we know as well from previous situations, including Southport, whenever there is information which is withheld, it tends to suggest to you that they're trying to hide something. And it's been said, was it Jonathan Hall, KC, who did the report into Southport, who said that, they made a mistake by not allowing more information to be released into the public domain. And that was why people got worked up, and that was why the riots happened. And, of course, all sorts of reasons can be given for the outrage that people had over that case. However, one of the main drivers of the unrest was the fact that the government would not issue, and the police would not issue, any information about the person who was then the suspect.
And it subsequently came out in the October that there were actually terrorism charges that were being brought alongside it.
Of course.
And nothing had been said in the July. I think you make the point about Jonathan Hall. There needs to be. And this has subsequently come out that Keir Starmer stood there, and of course this was an attack against his home, his home before, stood there afterwards and said, well, there's sub judice, I can't prejudice the investigation. Nobody would forgive me if I prejudice the investigation. But we know that in other cases that information has come out. It's perfectly possible for information to come out without prejudicing the case. It doesn't necessarily...
We have these arguments all the time with lawyers. We know the rules. You've been a journalist a long time, so have I. We know exactly what the contempt of court rules are. We know exactly when a case is live and when it's not. We know exactly when a charge comes and then that changes everything. But right now, there is no charge. There is an investigation going. Counter-terrorism police have been questioning this character, who they arrested, I think, on Tuesday morning. Aged 21, he was described as somebody with a grudge against Keir Starmer. Now, I would say this, again, because we're speculating, because they're not giving us any information, there's a pretty good chance that there's not many 21-year-olds with a grudge against the Prime Minister, are there?
No.
You know, so you'd have to ask the question, if you were investigating, well, why would a 21-year-old man have a grudge against the Prime Minister? Is it because he fears that he's going to be deported from the country?
Yeah.
Is it because he's some kind of immigrant who shouldn't be here? I just don't know.
So, and also, what's really concerning about this, Mike, is that there's a high degree of preparation to get hold of it. You know, you look at the pictures of the car, it explodes, right? And you've seen the damage to the front of the £2 million property in Kentish Town and the flat in Islington.
I mean, I said this yesterday. Very fortunately, the house did not burn down, but it could have done.
Or catch light and set like a row. It's a row of houses. So the individual was arrested in Sydenham, which is about 10 miles away, right down in South London. So he had to travel all the way up to carry out these attacks in North London. This is quite a sophisticated attack.
It's not some random sort of, you know, teenager who's gone, you know, oh, I know, there's the Prime Minister's house, I'll chuck a firebomb in it.
And it's not, and that information that he found, I don't know if you can find it with, you know, detailed searching of the internet. It's not readily available.
No, it's not. But you'd have to have gone into Companies House records. You'd have to have found previous addresses linked to the Prime Minister. It takes a fair bit of work.
So the question is, you know, and I'm not sure there are many 21-year-olds who could do that without the support, potentially of a hostile state like Iran, for instance, that actually goes away and does the donkey work, finds out of the addresses to attack and where, you know, what possible, you know, where to, you know, what to go for, and then provides the information to the 21-year-old, taps into this guy's, you know, disgruntlement or his grudge or whatever, and then provides him with, you know, the wherewithal to go and carry out this attack. And I don't, again, I just think it's much easier for the police just to be. And the, you know, and it may not even be the police that's doing this. It might be the Crown Prosecution Service that's blocking this. But for the the authorities,
there's clearly an issue. There's clearly an issue which comes from the Crown Prosecution Service and feeds down into the police. Because this is what happened in Southport. Even though the Crown Prosecution Service denied it, they said we did not tell the police not to release any information. The police say they did.
Well, there are a lot of old school coppers up in Merseyside who could see exactly what was the dangers were, exactly what was going to happen. Like we, you know, were chomping at the bit just to say.
But the leaders of Merseyside police, one of whom I think is now moved on because you know she made a massive error. You know, these are the same people who withhold information, and they do it deliberately because of what I can only describe as, you know, sensitivities. It's got nothing to do with the law. It's got everything to do with the fact that they don't want people to think that it's A, an asylum seeker, or B, somebody from a foreign country, or 3, you know, somebody from the Muslim community particularly. You know, they're terrified of any of those things being true. And so instead of telling us whatever it is that is the truth, they conceal everything and thereby create the kind of speculation that we get involved in.
Precisely that, and there's nothing, you know, there's no reason not to release this man's, from what I can see, just the nationality. It may have something to do with it, it may not have something to do with it, but there's no reason not to.
Why not tell us that the person that has been arrested is a 21-year-old man? You can give his name if you want to, or not give his name. But, I mean, as usual, they'll say, oh, he's a 21-year-old man from Sydenham. You know, in the same way that you know, Rudy Cabana was, you know, a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old from Cardiff. And which again is misleading.
Yeah, and it doesn't help. And I think, you know, just to your point about Mike, you know, the concerns that people, you know, living on the street have, those are legitimate concerns.
They are legitimate concerns.
They've woken up to see a house, well, firstly, last Thursday, a car explode on the street in the middle of the night, and then woken up to see the house, you know, Keir Starmer's house itself attacked. And I think the public do deserve a much greater degree of transparency. And I'm not saying we need to do exactly the same with what they do in the United States, where basically the whole setup is that somebody's basically guilty before they have any chance to prove their innocence. But they do, in the United States, they still manage to have fair trials.
They have very fair trials.
But
you know what's interesting? You know, I worked there for 10 years and I covered many trials, and one of them was the subway gunman, a guy by the name of Bernie Getz, who was a guy who was a white middle-class bloke who went to work every day, was sick to death in the 80s of all the crime and everything else that was affecting him. He'd been mugged about 3 times. He bought a gun, right? And he's on a subway one day, and these 4 black youths come up to him and start giving him some crap. So he starts shooting them, right? I think he killed one of them. He certainly, you know, paralysed one of them. You know, he's disabled still for the rest of his life. Shot the other 2, they got away. he gets charged. I covered the case. It was a massive case, and it was all over the press, the TV. The thing that astonished me was that the jurors who were picked to do the case, even before the case started, announced that they'd done book deals, you know, right, on the basis of whatever the case was going to be like. Yeah. And 3 of them wrote books, right? Yeah. And he was acquitted. And I thought to myself, hang on a minute, that can't be right. You can't just, like, go, because you want a better story, you quit the guy. Yeah. But he was acquitted. But actually it doesn't seem to affect it, whereas here we have this terribly kind of, you know, all people are really need to be treated like children. You know, you can't allow them to have any information because they might use it wrongly, or they might start rioting, or they might start beating up their Muslim neighbour. I mean, it's pathetic. You know, we should be treated like grown-ups in this country, and we're really not. And I think it's wrong.
No, but you know, I listened to Keir Starmer in that press conference. I was in that press conference when, you know, after Rudy Buchanan was, you know, boy, he pled guilty in the end. He admitted the charges, right? Yeah. And I didn't get any inclination from Keir Starmer that he wanted to change the law whatsoever. No. There was no sort of like, there was no recognition of what had gone wrong. No. And it actually being this, you know, the fault of the authorities for not releasing the information. It was like, no, we followed the due process, and the due process needs to remain in place. He's coming at it from a lawyer's background.
And of course, since then, a couple of reports have said that, you know, his assumptions about who was responsible for those riots and far-right thuggery and all that is actually rubbish, and there was no such suggestion whatsoever that anything was orchestrated by, you know, some dark force in the internet.
But the irony is that, you know, I was listening to some of the Labour MPs who were speaking in the House of Commons on Monday night now, sorry, get my days right. But, you know, listening to some, and they're now accusing him, Keir Starmer, of being the one who's going, you know, if they're riots,
of being a hate crime. Well, he's creating a hate crime. I mean,
you know, by talking of Ireland we've come full circle on.
We had Nigel Farage on yesterday, and he said, imagine if I'd come out with some of the things that Keir Starmer came out with, to wit, you know, if you want to come to this country, better learn to speak English. You know, the fact is we need to cut immigration. You know, immigration is clearly, you know, a problem in this country. All the things that Starmer came out and said, which have outraged the left of his party. If Farage had said them, as he said, he would need a personal security guard to walk anywhere down the street.
He has 8 at the moment.
Yeah. But he'd have to increase it because he would be painted as the biggest bigot that ever walked the earth.
Yeah, and I did they're speaking to Sarah Pochin, the new MP, and she said, you know, Labour.
She's very impressive, isn't she?
She is. Labour are more reform than reform, and she said it tongue in cheek, right? But the point stands that, you know, Keir Starmer with that speech on, you know, the speech at the beginning of the week, and the outrage from his own party. They are absolutely livid with him, particularly around that line.
Yeah, the Island of Strangers.
The Island of Strangers line is, you know.
Because that's the line that they're all saying he's taken from an Enoch Powell speech. I'll ask you about that in a minute. Let's have a look at Yvette Cooper. She was on Good Morning Britain, which is fast becoming, you know, Bad Morning Britain, being asked about the Island of Strangers comment. Have a look.
I think what you heard the Prime Minister say at the beginning of the clip that you played was to talk about the diverse nation, and he celebrated that.
Cooper, I'm sorry, at the beginning, for 5 minutes of his speech, from the beginning of his speech, for 5 minutes, he did not talk about the benefits of immigration. And then he used this phrase, Island of Strangers. So I repeat the question for the 3rd time. Is it a phrase you knew about, that you recognise, and that you would use?
No, but I think that's the problem. The immediate phrase that he said immediately before it was to talk about the diverse nation. And then he said, yeah, immigration needs to be controlled and managed. And I think there's a real challenge.
We risk becoming an island of strangers. And I just ask you again, did you know he was going to use that echo?
No, but the point is that this is...
And would you use that phrase?
I honestly think the point that he is making here is about we have to have controlled and managed. We have to have people who are able to speak English, that we have to make sure that we've got rules that are respected and enforced.
So she doesn't know whether she would ever use that phrase.
Well, the point is she can't say yes. Right. That's the point. Yeah. She can't say, yes, I'd use that phrase, yes, I knew that the phrase was going to be used, and yes, I stand by that phrase.
Because if she'd said that, the next question presumably would have been, are you aware that it was a similar phrase to one used by Enoch Powell?
Yes.
Speech back in the 1960s.
But also, this is the fundamental split that goes down, the sort of centre of the Labour Party, right? So, you have that Keir Starmer used a phrase, and he used an approach to immigration that fundamentally the Labour Party doesn't believe in.
Yes.
That's it. That's all you need to know. If you take away one thing, Keir Starmer saw what would happen in the local elections. He saw what happened in Runcorn and Helsby. His team. He's actually got, Morgan.
Where he's literally lost the 14,000 majority.
He's lost the 14. Labour's 16th APC seat, right? Morgan McSweeney, his chief strategist, has looked at this and thought, right, if we don't do something on immigration, if we don't deal with Nigel Farage right now, this is match point, right? For Labour.
Because
they
again,
don't deal with it right now.
The Sun today, this morning, as a new YouGov poll, immigration is now the top concern for Brits. A poll has found. Now, I've been saying this for years. Yeah. Even at the beginning, and I said this. Sorry to interrupt your train of thought, but in July last year, even in the run-up to the election, Labour potential, shadow ministers, soon to be government ministers, were still saying, "Oh no, it's not even the top 5 lists of concerns of the public." They're much more concerned about the cost of living. They're much more concerned about net zero. They're much more concerned about, their schools and their education for their children. Immigration doesn't come in the top 5. Wrong. It's been number 1. For the people that listen to this show and watch this show for the last 5 years, no question.
And what's interesting about this poll, Mike, is 53% agree with what Keir Starmer said, right? 53% of the public. That's enough for a majority in the House of Commons, right? That gets him over the line.
And for a man who's had approval ratings of -42, that is a massive gain for him.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and the 27%, by the way, so the gap between 53 and 27, it's not their top priority. They don't necessarily. They've got no opinion on it, right? So you just put those to one side. Yeah. But 27%, if only 27% of the public disagree with you, you're okay. Yeah. You're right.
That's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
So 53%, and Keir Starmer, he said it, and Number 10 wrote, absolutely right, on the line yesterday, saying that they thought he was right to use that phrase. They wouldn't budge on it. I was in that briefing. They wouldn't budge on it. They wouldn't say, Prime Minister backtracking. None of that, right?
Do you think they knew? Because this is a question that came up yesterday with Nigel Farage. I asked him, and he said that he thought it was accidental, that they didn't know, probably, that there was a reference that was used similarly by Enoch Powell, because it's such a long time ago that most of these Labour apparatchiks, not only were they not born, their parents weren't even born.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. They didn't know the link, and of course, once people have jumped on that link, and of course Enoch Powell.
And it was John McDonnell who jumped on it. I mean, Peter Blexley was in here yesterday saying he noticed it because he remembered it.
Well, he said that vintage, isn't he?
Yeah, and he said that he's going to claim victory for actually alerting the public to it. But John McDonnell's also of that vintage, and he recognised it as well. Yeah,
and he recognised it, and that's caused the heartache or the bellyache from Labour MPs. Yeah. They are so unhappy. Put that together with the winter fuel allowance, and the PIP disability payments, the welfare cuts that are coming. Keir Starmer, it's very difficult to depose a Labour leader. Don't for one moment get into this mindset. People should get into this mindset that we've had 14 years, and we've had they churn through their leaders really quickly because the mechanism within the Conservative Party it makes it very easy to do so. But that shouldn't just because it's difficult to get rid of a Labour Prime Minister or even a Labour leader, that shouldn't detract from the fact that his unpopularity and the sense of disgruntlement and anger on the Labour benches cannot be underestimated.
And they've never had somebody this unpopular. So, for people to say to me, and they do often, there's no mechanism to get rid of him, well, they'll find one if they have to, because that's what politics is. It's about finding solutions to things. And if he gets any more unpopular, he'll literally be below Genghis Khan at this point, it's absolutely ridiculous. Jeremy Kyle tells a story of how there was a poll done when he was doing the Jeremy Kyle show, when he was found to be something like the second most evil man that ever lived. He was above Saddam Hussein. I think Hitler won it. He was second, and it was Saddam Hussein, Genghis Khan, Mao Zedong, all these horrible dictators, and Jeremy Kyle. Starmer's in there now as one of the most hated men that's ever lived.
Yeah, and I think what's Mercy Mioroki's got a column, page 10 of the Sun.
Yeah, we're getting her on the show later.
It's a really good read actually. If you get the Sun, make sure you look at it. And this is the headline: decent, tolerant people have been gaslit into silence by the hysterical left. Wanting to reduce immigration does not make you a bigot.
Of course it doesn't.
And the point that Keir Starmer made, and just put Enoch Powell to the history of the quote or whatever to one side. The point that he was making is that if you're spending £4 million a day, and he said it himself, if a million people, if net migration is close to 1 million people, that's a city the size of Birmingham, that is unsustainable, and you will lead to this fracturing as a result of within communities up and down the country. And you may not see it in London, you may not see it in cities like where London is what it is, right? But you will see it elsewhere, and you're already starting to see it elsewhere in the country. Keir Starmer and his team have recognised what happened in the local elections. They realise what Nigel Farage and Reform tapped into. The problem is that his Labour Party hasn't clocked that yet.
No,
and they're not on the same train.
But the other problem is that he might think that more people support him in terms of what he wants to do with immigration than they did, but they still aren't going to vote for him. Because the people who voted Reform are so fed up with Labour and the Tories, they're not interested in going back to either one of them. They tell me every single day, Tories are dead and buried, and we don't trust Labour, and we don't trust Starmer, we don't trust the word he says. And so, he hasn't actually moved the dial at all in terms of reality.
He needs to do it, right? I think the only way out, I'd slightly disagree with you, in my view, is that if he can reduce immigration and he can stop the boats crossing the English Channel. And the reason I think you're right on that point is because he was asked at the very end of that press conference, are you prepared to leave the ECHR? And he said he's not prepared to do it. Now, do I think leaving abandoning human rights, is that the only way to go? No. But that Article 8, the cases that you have on your programme, the chicken nugget cases, I can't go to Albania because my son doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets, those cases have to stop. Judges need to stop using Article 8 or applying Article 8 when they receive that application from a claimant's barrister for asylum. They need to stop referring to Article 8. Now, Keir Starmer thinks that he can change the interpretation, but we've seen repeatedly that judges will make up their own.
Of course.
They'll make up their own mind, and they don't like taking direction.
It's not in his gift to do that unless we leave the ECHR and unless he actually makes proper policy, which he's not doing. We've got to break, though, because we're running very late and I'm getting into terrible trouble. Starmer is actually right for once on his Island of Strangers comment, says Steve. Starmer should have gone further, says Sean. If we import the third world, we become the third world, because that's the truth, says Sean from Bridlington. And Pauline Hitchin says, morning, Mike, I simply can't take Yvette Cooper seriously. She reminds me of an ineffective woke supply teacher from the 90s. Very true. It's 27 minutes past 6. We'll be back after this.
I think the whole conversation has changed. You know, some of us have got scars on our backs from fighting for this stuff for years and years, years in which it was not just unfashionable, but completely taboo to be aggressively questioning and challenging the scale of uncontrolled immigration. You know, those of us that have been at the forefront of this political debate have been called every name under the sun, and that's fine. We're used to it. You stick your neck out, you've got to be ready.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 29 minutes past 6. Goodness gracious me, the first half hour has gone absolutely like a rocket. We should turn our attentions to the big story on the front page of the Mail today, which is also on the front pages everywhere else. And for once, and you'll be pleased to know, it's not actually a political story. 38 years in jail for a murder he didn't commit. People saying this could be one of the worst miscarriages of justice ever. A bloke called Peter Sullivan, who's now 68 years old, he's in line for a £1 million compensation payout after judges quashed his conviction for the murder of 21-year-old florist Diane Sindel. This guy went to prison, right, 38 years ago, being known as the Beast of Birkenhead. Yeah. And apparently he wasn't the Beast of Birkenhead. And incredibly, he came out and said he wasn't bitter or angry yesterday. I'm like, sorry? You know, I was annoyed because somebody that was supposed to be delivering something to me yesterday was a bit late. Yeah. This guy's been in prison for 38 years for no reason, and he's fine.
I don't know how you come out. I mean, it's an extraordinary story. I don't know how you come out of 38, having spent 38 years in prison, and how you kind of you're reintegrated into society. I think that must just be an impossibility.
Well, it's a bit like, do you remember the Shawshank Redemption, when the old guy gets released and he doesn't really want to go?
Thinking about this,
right?
Yeah.
And he comes out and there's cars that he doesn't recognise and there's people rushing about in the street because he doesn't remember what that was like. I mean, if you think about 38 years ago, what are we talking about? So 25, 35, so back into the 1980s.
It's 86.
Right. So, I mean, a lot has changed since then. I mean, if he comes back to, say, the street that he lived in, who knows what's different there than it used to be like.
As God is my witness, it is said that the truth shall set you free. It is unfortunate that this does not have a time scale. This was a statement that was released through his solicitor yesterday. So he must be coming into society and just thinking, like, what, you know, I mean, he's got so much to catch up on. Like, we're now at the point of artificial intelligence.
Well, let's talk about, with ChatGPT. Ever heard of that? What? Margaret Thatcher was still Prime Minister in 1986, right?
Yeah.
Who was President? Ronald Reagan, President of the United States of America. I don't know who was number one. We can probably look it up.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a very different time.
Yeah,
completely
different time. And I feel slightly sorry for him in a way that obviously he's not just for the fact that he's been in prison for 38 years, but you know, how is he going to reintegrate? And I'm not. Yes, I'm surprised. You know, to not be. You know, we get annoyed if we don't get the delivery or whatever. I'm in the same boat as you with that, Mike. I get annoyed with all sorts of stupid stuff, and so him not being angry. But I can sort of like maybe understand that actually his life is in prison and suddenly he's got to leave and he's had everything done for him and he's suddenly got to leave.
And so there's an element of you do become sort of institutionalised, don't you? And just looked up, as you might expect, the hit songs of 1986. West End Girls, Pet Shop Boys, great song. Erasure, Sometimes. Wham, finished with a farewell concert at Wembley Stadium. Greatest Hits album. Wake Me Up Before You Go. Last Christmas was their fourth number one. Comic Relief was founded. Cliff Richard made a song, The Young Ones. I mean, it's just a different world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Madonna had the biggest selling album of the year with True Blue. I mean, it really takes you back, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We may have to do this, 1986, what were we doing, you know, because I can't imagine not being in the general population for that many years, 38 years, and then suddenly, and of course, when he went into prison, he was only 30.
Yeah.
And he's now 68.
And this has all come about...
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, and it's all come about because of DNA, advances in DNA.
Christian just said he might want to go back in. He's seen what's going on in this country. He might be absolutely right, you know. But he'd get a bloody shock if he goes down Whitechapel way to see the sign for Whitechapel Station in Urdu. Yeah. He'll go, blimey, when did that happen? Crikey, what's that big mosque there? That wasn't there before. What's going on with that?
Yeah, it is a very, very different world
to the
one we lived in 1986.
It really is. I mean, being from the newspaper background that I am, you know, they probably have missed a trick today, but tomorrow, no doubt, I know at the weekend there'll be all sorts of columnists writing about, you know, how Britain has changed since, you know, 38 years ago.
Yeah.
His words on release: I lost my liberty 4 decades ago over a crime I did not commit. What happened to me was very wrong, but it does not detract or minimise that all of this happened off the back of a heinous and most terrible loss of life, and did not commit murder or unlawfully take the life of another person. Amazing. And they discovered that apparently the DNA that was supposedly used to convict him wasn't his.
Yeah.
How's it taken 38 years to figure that out?
I don't know. And you know, obviously there have been advances in this technology and the science and stuff. I mean, I remember covering cases where it was obviously, and this is what happens the other way around, is that they've kept, DNA samples, they've kept samples from the crime scene, and then they've convicted somebody off the back. Colette Arram was a case in Nottinghamshire I covered. That I wasn't. It was back in, again, 80s or 90s, and this individual lived was never caught, never found the killer, never found the murderer, until one of his relations got pulled over for motoring offence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because this, I guess, is the other question you would ask, that because he applied for permission to appeal in 2019, that was rejected. Then in November last year, the Criminal Cases Review Commission said his case had been referred to the Court of Appeal on the basis of this new DNA evidence. But it effectively means that whoever did kill this poor woman, basically Diane Sindall, she's called, who was a bride-to-be, she was working in a bar, very young woman, has got away with it scot-free.
Yeah.
So whoever did commit the murder is still out there somewhere.
Or they've died. Because it happened such a long time ago.
Yeah.
They've got away with it.
Unbelievable. Here's some... I love the way that our audience reacts to this stuff. Mike and Theo. Annie from Knott says, that guy's about 10,000 hours of Coronation Street to catch up on. Poor bugger. The most shocking thing about going to prison in 1986 and coming out today is the astonishing decline in the music industry, says Sean from Bringston. That's actually true.
We don't really have number ones anymore, do we?
Well, I mean, we do.
But we don't
I watched Laura Kunzberg. Did you watch her on Sunday? And she had this guy Youngblood on, right, who I'd never heard of, who's apparently had loads of #1 albums, and he's some kind of... He spells Youngblood, of course, wrongly. Youngblud. And he's this apparently very, sort of chic young person. But he's not that young. He's like, 28, 29, something like that. And he's a rapper. But apparently he's very well known. I've never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
No, good. I'm glad it's not just me. He's been in a UK prison, Mike. They have TV, internet and drones delivered to their cell windows. He wasn't in Shawshank, says Betty. Well, you say that, but you don't know, do you, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Well, he's been able to catch up on everything.
Maybe he's been watching it all. Let's get Dave on a voice note.
Good morning, Mike. This is Dave, travelling into London on a nice sunny day on the A3. Just want to comment on the Keir Starmer's firebombing situation. I can absolutely guarantee that if that was a white male with any kind of centre-right leanings, we would know his identity by now.
I think that's probably right. I think there's no question about that, which is why I'm asking the question, is it possible that this bloke who's set fire to 2 houses and a car could be, in fact, an asylum seeker of one kind or another? The Telegraph hints at it this morning, saying that he could be connected to some kind of hostile state. Could well be. But it doesn't strike me that somebody Russian would do something like that. It doesn't really strike me that somebody Chinese would do something like that. It's got all the hallmarks of an Islamist kind of, shall we say, Middle Eastern bred attack. That's what it seems like to me. I'm purely speculating, and the reason I'm speculating, of course, is because the police and the authorities will not give us any information. They will not release the nationality of the suspect. As simple as that. 6:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, and this, of course, is the home of common sense. We're speculating about what is behind the arson attack on Keir Starmer's 2 homes and a car. We'll get more into that as the story goes through the next 3 hours or so. Story on page 1 of the Telegraph as well, though. Speaking of a man who's been in prison for 38 years, prisoners will be released from jail as little as a third of the way through their sentences if they behave well, under more government plans to tackle the overcrowding crisis. So, again, the government kind of getting caught with the trousers down, haven't got enough space for criminals, so what do? Just let some of them out.
Yeah.
You know,
and
why not?
Yeah, and what's interesting about this, of course, is that, you know, we've seen the overcrowding. They're taking this case from, you know, they're taking this lead from Texas, where you can earn points in prison, which then allows you privileges, but it also allows you early release as well. And the way they want to do
sort of time off for good behaviour on steroids.
Exactly. But I think many people, I think the way to look at it is from the point of view of the victims. You know, people go to court, the judge can hand down. Imagine if a judge is handing down a 9-year sentence, and you're, because you've been, you know, a loved one of yours has been brutally attacked, you know, sort of attempted murder or grievous bodily harm case. That's the sort of sentences you're going to get for 9 years. You would expect that individual not to serve 3 years.
Yes.
I think that would be a reasonable expectation the public would have, you know, if they have been the victim of a
people are not happy they
crime.
generally only serve about half their sentence. They certainly don't want to be a third.
But if you're serving 3 years for a 9-year sentence, I mean, why don't you just, you know, do away with the whole thing, just give them a 3-year sentence? You wouldn't do that, of course, because then you'd be accused of going soft on crime.
Also, if you did do that, they'd be out in 1 year. You know, because that's the way it goes. I mean, they're claiming that it's only going to be for offences like burglary and shoplifting, which will be, you know, considered to be lower level crimes. But burglary is not a low level crime. It's not. If you ever had your house burgled, you know, or anything stolen, you know, it's a very violating crime. You know, it's not something that you just wake up from and go, oh, thank God he didn't kill me, he's only burgled my house. You know, these people are dangerous criminals who should be put up in jail for a long time. So they should be put off from coming out and doing it again. You know, but this won't work. Let's have a look at the CEO of Thames Water. There's a guy called Chris Weston. He was up before a select committee yesterday and being quizzed by Sky News.
Please, I have said everything to the committee for the last 2 hours.
You're in a public-facing role, and customers deserve an explanation because they've been treated very badly. They're facing huge bills. You've got plenty of money. Give them an explanation.
What do you want an explanation of?
How the company got to this point, how you're going to save it, how can you change culture when you're still taking big bonuses?
There are a lot of questions in there. I have answered all of those questions for the committee. I am absolutely sure that we will save the company and we will sort it out and we'll improve its operations and we will restructure its balance sheet so there is less debt and performance will improve over time, but this is going to take 5 to 10 years. And I'm sorry it's taking so long, but that is the reality of the situation.
Do you want to say sorry?
I said I'm sorry that the service that the customers receive, it's not where we would like it to be. Everyone is very committed in Thames to trying and sort it out. So absolutely, I'm sorry of the service some people receive, but it will absolutely get fixed.
He's sorry that the service some people receive isn't very good. He hasn't quite managed to mouth those words, but he's not sorry that he's continued to take a bonus. He's not sorry that the price of water has gone shooting through the roof. I think it's up something like 38 to 40% this year.
Sorry, not sorry. Yes, I saw a fantastic quote from that. Which was, I mean, say fantastic. I mean, it's not fantastic; it's awful. Where it was something along the lines of, we wanted to, you know, we need a bonus structure in order to maintain our most precious resource, our senior management team. It's like
and the senior management team running a company literally into the ground. Where I mean, I will say this about water companies. You know, the stuff falls from the sky for free. How can you manage to make a loss by selling it?
So it's a monopoly, and because they don't have any competition, they can just appoint these, you know, bozos to the top of the company, and expect there's nobody chomping at the heels of Thames Water, because you can only have one company that supplies water for a particular region, and that's ultimately the problem. And there is a legitimate argument to say with utilities such as water, just to nationalise the thing. But could you then trust the government to get the right people into?
Well, do you know, they do it in Scotland, and actually quite successfully, because when I lived in Scotland, water, it comes as part of your council tax bill, and Scottish Water is a sort of wholly owned, nationalised company, and it works fine. And occasionally they make mistakes and things happen. But I mean, he was asked to justify his bonus of $195,000 for 3 months of work, which is bonkers.
It's impossible. It's impossible to do. The point, Thames Water. If Thames Water was going up against, say, a different company who could provide water to the households in that region,
the Ryanair of water, or something.
And then suddenly the performance was so fantastic that. He ran the other company into the ground and people got a great deal, then you could see the argument for it. But there's no competition. So you're basically getting £195,000 for not just not doing your job, but doing your job.
And it's 156% of his actual salary, right, as a bonus, which is, it's one thing to say, all right, give him a 20% bonus. 156, so your salary is doubled, and you get another 50% on top of that. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk about Gary Lineker. He's in the hot water again because he put out a tweet yesterday, basically, which was considered to be anti-Semitic because, of course, once again, he was retweeting somebody else's tweet, but he had a picture of a rat on it when it was talking about Israelis and which talking about what was going on in Gaza. It was accompanied footage of a Canadian-Palestinian lawyer attacking the war in Gaza, and former Labour MP Lord Austin said Lineker has gone too far, the BBC must fire him now. Basically, it appears to echo Nazi propaganda, says ex-BBC boss Danny Cohen. I think even Lineker realised that because he removed the tweet shortly thereafter.
He deleted the tweets, and of course rats were regularly used in Nazi Germany as imagery to depict Jewish people. Of course, in the Times. The irony, of course, is that Gary Lineker, when we were talking about immigration under Boris Johnson's government, said we're now in a similar situation to Nazi Germany.
He hasn't said anything about Keir Starmer's new immigration policy, has he?
No.
As far as we can tell.
He was in the St George's Day video.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer put out on April the...
Yeah, because he went to a sort of a Downing Street reception, didn't he?
Downing Street reception. And of course, Gary Lineker is outgoing. He's leaving Match of the Day. But I think these calls for him to be sacked, I would love to say that you could have some confidence the BBC might take action, the BBC might do something.
You know what they're going to do? They're going to say, oh, he deleted the tweet.
Yeah.
So just like Lucy Connolly deleted her tweet, but she's in prison, unfortunately.
But we're not surprised. Nobody who's followed Gary Lineker is surprised by this.
No. But it's the end result of allowing him to do what he does without him understanding what he's doing, because he's that stupid. He's literally like the one-eyed man, the land of the blind. He now considers himself to be clever because he's a clever footballer, but actually the man is a complete and utter failure on all sorts of counts, and he has no clue about the dangers of what he's doing.
No, and this starts with a misguided approach to. A wrong-headed, misguided approach to what's happening in the Middle East. No word, of course, from Gary Lineker after what happened on October the 7th and the atrocities committed by Hamas. And it just goes over the edge. And this is propaganda from Hamas, and ultimately which is being pushed by the Iranian by the Iranian regime,
and he's falling for it.
And then
so they must love it. The guy who's just come out of the clink after 38 years, says Simon in Durham, will probably be well versed on what's happening in the world. Probably has a flat screen TV with Netflix in his cell, Xbox, and probably got hold of the latest iPhone from another inmate. I don't know about that. Morning, about great show, says Phil in Coventry. Just a thought, this chap who spent all those years in prison, he will remember the country exactly how I wish it was now. And Mark says in Somerset, once again, the police withholding the name and ethnicity of the man arrested. What happens and lessons will be learned? Obviously none. Well, that's the trouble. Again, it's the police who will be probably behind all of this, the management of the police saying don't give any information out. Let's see if that changes throughout the course of today. 6:48.
We know that over the past 3 years he's been on countless foreign jet-setting luxury trips around the world at our expense. He says it's to, foster relations with foreign countries and to tell them how wrong Russia was to invade Ukraine. I'm not sure what that has got to do with the Speaker, but there you are. He spent about £300,000 over the last 3 years going on these luxury trips.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:51. Theo Usherwood's here with us. £1 million for nearly 40 years in prison. I would want a lot more than that, says Lisa. A great show as always. Yeah, I think so. I imagine in America you get about 50 million for that. Let's get a voice note from Jonathan.
Good morning, Mike. This is Jonathan here. I'm just wondering, where is St. Gary Lineker today criticising Keir Starmer's speech on immigration? He was very quick off the mark to criticise the Conservative policy of sending migrants to Rwanda. I think he compared it to 1930s Germany. But all of a sudden, Juggy Ears seems to be very quiet this morning. I wonder why.
Yes. Well, I mean, as usual, when he gets into trouble on Twitter, he goes into hiding for a few days and, goes and has lunch with some friends of his or something and disappears. Doesn't like talking about it. A couple of things to mention. The front page of the I newspaper has got new migrant rules boost the UK's hopes of a softer Brexit deal, and which includes, basically, the idea that perhaps the fishing deal has already been done by Keir Starmer. He's already kind of sold more fishing rights to the EU. Effectively.
And it looks like there's going to be this is next Monday's reset with the European Union. There is going to be a youth mobility scheme. Now Number 10 moved on that last
week. Which is a sort of migrant by any other name, isn't it? Scenario.
So if they can. And it depends on the limit that people have to be in the 18 to 30s would have to be in the UK.
Right.
If you get it down to 12 months, then they wouldn't be included within the net migration number.
Right.
And of course, so Keir Starmer wants to, going by what happened last Monday, wants to get net migration down.
So what about all this business of training British people to do jobs in Britain? What's happened to that? That was only yesterday.
It's not going to. They're going to be able to. Firms are going to be. This is a Treasury. But this is a win for the Treasury. This is a win for Rachel Reeves. Businesses, big businesses say, well, we need people to be able to work in coffee shops or sandwich bars or whatever. And the way they're going to get them is they're going to get them from the European Union. And you're right. It's a blow for. We've got 1 million young people in this country who are. Either not in education or work or training.
Well, I mean, they've only been 2 steps away from saying British jobs for British workers, haven't they? Talking about retraining people, getting people more apprenticeships, instead of importing cheap foreign labour. And now here they are getting cheap foreign labour.
And that's what it'd be. I don't. If
this is why people don't trust Keir Starmer, because he says one thing and he does something else.
And let's wait and see.
But what about the fishing though? Because the fishing rights are going to also annoy people.
The fishing rights, and it's just also worth mentioning, Mike, what the rejig is for. The rejig is that actually Europe has. We've seen the threat from Russia in Ukraine. Europe has an opportunity. We've seen that Donald Trump is no longer willing to fund NATO and support NATO to the tune of double the percentage of GDP compared to most other European countries. Only Poland really has a respectable percentage that compares anywhere close to what America does in terms of support for NATO. And so Europe needs to rearm. They've come up with this €150 billion defence fund, and they won't let British companies bid for it.
Yeah.
Because we're not part of their defence and security alliance, right? So the way that we get access to that, and you'd think in this moment of sort of international crisis where actually they need to get the best deals, the European Union.
Well, Starmer keeps meeting up with these European leaders. He doesn't seem to get anything out of it.
Put everything to one side and allow the likes of BAE Systems to bid for that contracts for that money. And no, rather than doing that, the Europeans have dug their heels in and said, we need more. We need to get back some fishing rights. And so that's exactly.
But Starmer must be the worst negotiator in the history of negotiating, because I mean, it was only the weekend he was on that in Europe meeting Zelensky and Macron.
Coalition of the willing.
The coalition of the willing, and there was that ludicrous idea that they were all snorting cocaine at the same time, which of course they all denied and turned out to be complete rubbish. But what's he doing with these people if all he's getting is snubbed every time he goes? Can we get access to do this with you? If we want to be all together on defence of the Ukraine, but actually you're not even giving us access to the market. That's bonkers.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd just go, sorry guys, if you want to have a meeting, first of all, you're going to have to give me this. Yeah. And if you want me to be there and you want us to be in support of whatever it is you're doing, then you better give us the access to this market. Otherwise, we're not coming.
Well, he's not done that. They've gone back into a room.
Then.
Yeah. He's gone back into the room and said, they've gone, OK, fine, we'll negotiate away fishing rights.
Yeah. It's madness, absolute madness. We're going to mention Donald Trump in a second, because he's been out in Saudi Arabia, of course, but we've got to mention this on the front page of the Times. It's their main story. Weight loss drugs hailed as a key to longer life. Now, I'm getting very suspicious about all this, right? Because the weight loss, literally the weight loss drugs are going to make you thinner, richer, more beautiful. You're going to get a great girlfriend. Next you'll be driving a Lamborghini. Just take some of these drugs. And it's all being pushed by the government. These are government advisors telling us this.
Yes.
Which makes me smell a bit of a rat, I'm afraid.
Yes, and they're seeing a cheap way out. The problem with these drugs, and I was listening to an expert talk about these things, is you have to keep on taking them.
Yeah.
So you take Mounjaro, you take Wegovy.
But we don't know the long-term effects of them still.
We don't. We still don't know the long-term effects of them. But you take these drugs, you don't become necessarily addicted to these drugs. But if you stop taking them, then you put the weight back on.
You put the weight back on, yeah. Exactly right.
You start putting the weight back on. You can't, all they do is they suppress appetite.
This is a guy called Professor John Deanfield, Government Advisor on Health Policy. He says the treatments are better than statins, as they can prevent multiple diseases. So, like I say, yesterday they said they can prevent you from getting cancer.
Yeah.
I just don't trust these characters, because it's all about the money, it seems to me. And if the government can give away this stuff via the NHS, somebody's going to be getting very, very rich. And I just don't trust this advice.
It's put up, I think, is it correct me if I'm wrong, I saw the statistic somewhere, that Wegovy is a Danish-made drug.
I don't know.
And it's, let me look it up in a second, but it's added something like 3% to Denmark's GDP.
Yeah.
I mean...
It's
astonishing.
It's all about the money. Follow the money.
One company.
Follow the money.
Has
exactly.
Just,
Well, let's have a look at Donald Trump, because this is what he had to say about it yesterday.
I mean, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called me up and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy, very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. Said, President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88, and in New York I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on?
You've got to laugh, haven't you? He's got a turn of phrase. It's not working. So yeah, there's another thing. So you pay $88 for it here, which you can, and you presumably can just ring up. We did a story. In fact, we're nearly out of time. We did a story the other day about how there was some hotels now you can check in and they'll give you the fat jab as part of the sort of the
deal,
the mini bar. Here's a bit of fat jab. Anyway, we'll come back to all that. Theo, good to see you. We've got to run. Thank you very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of the day. We've got lots more for you over the course of the next 3 hours. We're still going to be asking that question: where is this firebomber from? And why won't the government or the police tell us? I think that's the question of the day. This is Morning Glory. We'll be back after the news.
is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome back to Morning Glory. The sun is up. It's a beautiful day. There's a flower moon out there, by the way. So if you were up and about last night late, you might have seen a beautiful, great big red ball in the sky, which would have been the moon. And apparently it's called a flower moon because it's the time of year when all the flowers come out. Of course, most people would say all the flowers have already come out, but never mind. It's going to be a lovely week. It's going to be a lovely day today. So you might want to get out and about and get off and do something. And if you haven't got up yet, you really should be up because it's time to get the kids ready for school. Hostile state linked to Starmer firebombs is the big story this morning I'm talking about. It's on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Terror police, and that is, of course, people from the specialist detectives from Scotland Yard's SO15 counter-terror branch who are investigating what happened when Keir Starmer's house was firebombed. This is a house that he used to live in up until recently when he went to Downing Street. He rented it to his sister-in-law, who now apparently lives there. Very fortunately for everybody inside the house and everybody in the street in North London, the fire did not escalate and the fire department officials were able to put it out, but it did cause quite a lot of fire damage. There was also a car blown up and set fire to by the same assailant, a 21-year-old man who is said to bear a grudge against Keir Starmer. But what the Telegraph headline tells us is that this man's identity may reveal everything about what the motive was for him doing what he did, because he also attacked another house that Keir Starmer used to live in quite a long time ago. So it's quite a sophisticated search scenario going on where he's found two properties that Keir Starmer was associated with, plus a car which he'd apparently sold previously to a neighbour. So my question that I'm asking this morning is, why is it that the terror police and the government will not reveal the identity of this individual or indeed his nationality? because the nationality might give a clue as to what his grudge was against Keir Starmer. My contention is that maybe he's an asylum seeker of some kind who's come here from a place like Iran to do harm to somebody in this country, rather like the Iranian terror suspects who have been arrested a couple of weeks ago, who were plotting an imminent attack on the Israeli embassy in London. So this, I'm afraid, is a matter of grave national security. He might not be an asylum seeker, of course. He could be somebody who was born and raised in this country and who went over to join ISIS in Syria a few years ago. We found out yesterday there's 400 of these jihadis who have been away learning how to kill people and learning how to fight in various parts of the desert in Syria and in Iraq. And suddenly now they've come back to North London and have decided to firebomb the Prime Minister's home. I don't know. But the fact is, until we're told what these people are doing, we will never know. According to Tony in Sussex, he says, quite right, Mike, if the suspects had been British, their name would be all over the mainstream media. Great show. If these attacks on Keir Starmer prove to be an asylum seeker who came on a small boat, will he finally take action on those small boats, says Nick in Kent? Well, it's a good question. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Zoe in Lancashire says this: I think we all realise, Mike, that when the police refuse to tell us the nationality of a person who started these fires, that they are probably a foreigner. I know this because if it was a white British bloke, it would be all over the news. Weight, height, address and marriage status. We're not stupid. We deserve to know. This is the problem. And, you know, it's that Southport syndrome all over again, isn't it? Where the police were told that they were wrong to withhold information, where the government was told, even under the guise of Keir Starmer, that they were wrong to withhold information, because information should be given out so that people have the full facts. Let's not forget, there are people living next door to Keir Starmer who were in fear of their lives when some maniac turns up with a petrol bomb to blow them up. And basically the terror police, the counter-terror police, have now said to MPs, if you notice anything suspicious, give us a call. Well, that's great, isn't it? Well, there's 400 jihadis wandering around the country looking to do harm to politicians. I think it should be a little bit more of the information that we need, rather than just sort of hit and hope that nobody really does you any harm. It's nonsense, isn't it? Joanna Bell's here, political journalist. Joanna, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you today?
I'm all right, but I need answers, right? Because this government, once again, they've been told so many times that this is not the way to proceed, that the police need to give information out. They've arrested this 21-year-old who lived somewhere in southeast London, but they've not given any details out about him, which leads people to be suspicious that there's a reason for that.
Look, you know, they obviously don't want another Southport riot event to take place. And, you know, this actually might inspire more riots. However, I don't think people are going to do that in London. But it's absolutely disgraceful. Have they not learned their lessons from the last time? Why won't they give people the information on who it is?
Yeah,
you know,
it's very straightforward, isn't it? I mean, normally speaking, if they don't give the name of a suspect out, they give out, you know, where they're from, what their address is, and all that. All they've told us is that he's from Sydenham in southeast London. But my suspicion is that because they won't give out any information, he'll probably turn out to be somebody from somewhere else.
Well, of course, Mike, and you know, there's obviously a reason they're not giving out the information. And like one of your listeners said, if it was a British person, you'd know their name. They'd have their picture splayed everywhere. Yeah. And this is the problem in this country. You know, there's no transparency, right, and things need to change. You know, it's funny because, you know, as I was reading about the attack on Sir Keir's home, that it just came, you know, a day after a group of 6 Bulgarians received lengthy jail sentences for being part of a spying operation on behalf of Moscow.
Yes.
So it could be something to do with that. Nobody knows,
right. But don't you think that as well that MPs and people, say in the public eye, deserve to be treated better as well? I mean, basically the terror police have said to MPs, you know, let us know if you see anything suspicious. Well, what do they mean by that? Do they mean that this is part of a concerted effort by, you know, foreign hostile states to do harm to politicians in this country? I don't know.
Well, it's and they should all be very, very scared. You know, they said, oh, you know, MPs need to be extra vigilant, and it's like, how do you
yeah.
become vigilant? You know, this guy went to his old house. He targeted his old car. It's obvious that this was an act of intimidation.
Yes.
I don't think that. I mean, if they wanted to do harm, they would have done harm. But I don't think there was an intention to actually hurt anyone.
Yeah.
This seems like an act of aggression and a warning to Keir, and it could be because of his stance now on asylum seekers.
Well, it could well be. That's the point, isn't it? Commander Dominic Murphy, who is in charge of the investigation in Scotland Yard, says this: "We are working at pace and continue to explore various lines of inquiry to establish the cause of the fires and any potential motivation for these. A key line of inquiry is whether the fires are linked due to the two premises and the vehicle all having previous links to the same high-profile public figure." But he's not exactly Inspector Clouseau, this guy, is he? Well, I think there's pretty good chance that the events are actually linked, given that the fire in the car was outside the same fire in the house. I mean, for heaven's sake. He then says, "We recognise that this investigation may cause concern to other public figures, particularly MPs." I mean, you know, so we need to know more, don't we?
Of course. Look what happened to, you know, Sir John Amies and Joe Cox. You know, there is a clear and present danger to these MPs.
Yeah.
And, you know, they need to create more transparency. It's disgraceful that, you know, that they're, you know, basically being left bare out on the streets with no protection.
Yeah, exactly right.
And how did these people? How did he find out his old car? How did he get that information?
Yeah, I mean,
isn't that quite scary?
I know the only clue seems to be, but it would have taken some research to do this, and you know, I'm not sure whether this 21-year-old did it or somebody else did it for him. But the car was sort of recorded, if you like, because at one point there was Keir Starmer ran into a cyclist, believe it or not. You know, the careful Keir, he ran over a cyclist in Islington who was fine, but he was then accused of leaving the scene of the accident because there was some misunderstanding. And so I think somebody pictured the car, so he was obviously able to find that somewhere on the internet. The house you could easily find because he stood outside it clapping for the NHS during COVID, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that was easily to find. But the other house was a flat that he apparently lived in with a previous girlfriend. So that's a long time ago that somebody's found that out, and that's in a different part of North London. And that didn't have such a bad problem with a fire, but it was also fire damage on the front door. You know, I mean, that's a picture that was taken by somebody, a photographer that we know.
Wow.
That's outside of his house, and so I mean, if you really want to, you can identify it. But the point is that, you know, there's quite a lot of work has obviously gone into these firebomb attacks.
Well, exactly, and that's why I think it's, you know, this is a scare tactic by a sophisticated cell, which could be linked to Moscow or Iran, and well, they're both one of the same, really, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to know, but I definitely think that the police need to be a bit more forthcoming, shall we say, with information. Maybe they don't know it themselves yet, but they should certainly at least tell us the nationality of the individual. You know, if he happens to be British, that's fine. If he happens to be Iranian, that's also fine. We just need to know the truth, really.
Well, that's it. And, you know, people are very scared. You know, is there a terror cell? Is there somebody going to attack them? People deserve to know.
Yeah. Exactly right, because, you know, as we saw from the stories we did yesterday, there's a lot of dangerous people wandering the streets of Britain. Some of them have been working in the Middle East, some of them have been signed up to ISIS, some of them have been murdering people in the desert out there in Syria and in Turkey and in Iraq, and they're all now back in Britain. We don't know what they're doing.
Well, exactly, and now that Keir's done his Enoch Powell speech, he might be even a bigger target because he's trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And it's really not, you know, it's quite a scary time to be in Britain because there's so much unrest right now.
Yeah, well, exactly right. And how about this from Tony, who says, Enoch Starmer has become a right-wing knuckle-dragger. It's hilarious. Well, I mean, he has, hasn't he? I mean, he's now been accused by his own party of echoing the words and the sentiments about immigration of Enoch Powell. It's quite an extraordinary situation. He's suddenly gone from being Mr. Human Rights Lawyer to let's lock them all up and send them all back.
It's unprecedented. So he was paraphrasing Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech and the strangers in their own land.
Yeah.
You know, and it's obvious he doesn't really believe this. He's rattled by Reform's big win in Runcorn and wants to get the Reform voters. But, you know...
He's not going to get them, is he?
Well, I don't think they're that stupid, but maybe they are. Maybe they can see through his cynical ploy to get them. But it's like...
But all the Reform voters that I speak to are never going to vote for the two main parties again. One of the reasons Reform has been so successful in the last couple of years is because they represent something different. They represent an alternative to the uni party, as they call it. Because let's face it, I mean, the Tories ruined the immigration status of people coming into this country, and the Labour government have just done exactly the same and made it worse.
Well, they're destroyed, and you can see the discord within the party. Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, has, attacked him. He's, it's actually, it's a backlash.
Yeah.
His backbenchers are, going against him, and that's not very good. He doesn't have his own party on side. Nobody believes that he thinks that, we're an island of strangers, because he literally represented these people as a human rights lawyer.
Exactly. Well, he literally physically prevented certain killers and really, really bad people from being deported, because he got them literally dragged off planes. As a human rights lawyer and as a politician, he signed his name to all sorts of petitions to keep people in this country, I think at least one of whom ended up killing somebody again after remaining here.
He's a total hypocrite.
Yeah.
And nobody believes him. And, I was warming to him last week after the trade deals with India and America, but now I'm starting to see things a little bit more clearly. And,
yes. Well, this is what happens. Listen, when you talk to me for long enough, Joe, you get a lot of common sense comes on board for you. Thank you very much indeed. One final thought for you. Net zero will not cut electricity bills. This is another problem for Starmer. This is basically a word of Chris O'Shea, Chief Executive of Centrica, British Gas's parent company. He wrote on LinkedIn that the shift to renewable power will not materially reduce UK electricity prices from current levels. They may give price stability and avoid future price spikes based on the international gas market, but they will definitely not reduce the price. So there goes another dream of Miliband's and Starmer's straight into the dust.
And he's also, spent 33,000 on a first-class trip to China.
Yeah.
To speak to the Chinese. The Chinese people don't even know who he is. He could have done it on Zoom, but he took 5 aides on a business class flight over to China, stayed in a 5-star luxury hotel, and all paid for by who, Mike?
Yeah, by us, I'm afraid, unfortunately. Yeah.
I hope he had a lovely time.
I hope he did. He didn't even bring us back a souvenir, the swine. Anyway, there we are. Joanna, very nice to see you. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. This from Brian on the quashed conviction of Peter Sullivan.
Morning, Mike. Brian from South End. Just a quickie on this fellow who's been released after 38 years. It's a shocking state of affairs, without a doubt, and feel sorry for the family, obviously, who still won't get no closure. However, when this fella comes out and he turns the telly on and he sees old Starmer, doing his speeches and all that, he'll be shocked that Max Headroom is still on the telly after all these years. Surely.
He will be. He definitely. Well, that's Max Headroom. Definitely. That's definitely him. He does look exactly like him and sound exactly like him. Let's get Dan from Liverpool. He's got something to say about Starmer's speech. Dan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. I would just like to know, am I allowed to now phone the police on Upveria Kia for a non-crime hate incident after that speech?
Almost certainly, yeah, absolutely, definitely inciting violence.
If any one of us, I believe we would have had a knock on the door by now.
Of course you would. Absolutely right. Especially if you were anywhere in one of those police areas where they like to knock on people's doors. I mean, Manchester in particular, they're quite keen, aren't they?
Yeah, especially if you're a young female with a young daughter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's astonishing, isn't it, that he's come out with this stuff as if we didn't know that he said something completely different before this.
Yes, it is. Well, Mike, you have a lovely day now.
I will. Thank you, Dan. Good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. Nan in Wales says this: I never thought I would say this country is no longer a safe country. I never thought this country would have political prisoners. I never thought this country would not protect its borders. I never thought this country would find its police service, who I feel are against the people. And I never thought this country would advocate for war. I'm not sure how this has now happened. I'm not sure why, but it's wrong and it goes against all of our morals and values. It all needs fixing, and pretty damn quick. Nan, that's such a good point. All of those points are all very good points, in fact. And, yeah, I never thought we'd be in this place either. But here we are with a government which is completely and utterly hypocritical, a government which speaks with forked tongue, a government which says one thing and does another, like we just heard from Theo Usherwood. You know, on the one hand, Starmer's talking about building up apprenticeships in this country, giving British jobs to British people, clamping down on immigration significantly. Then, with the other hand, he's going to Europe and saying, let's ship in a load of younger people to work in jobs because British people don't want to do them. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up, does it? What's he up to? 7:19.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a Member of Parliament, you are gifted loads of things. You are genuinely told that there are certain things that you're able to keep, and you don't have to declare it if it's worth less than £300. I think about £300. So what's interesting is that it does really reveal the absolute lavish nature of a lot of what these members of Parliament get. And I think what we have to be very clear about is any Member of Parliament that claims that they are hard done by, that the £80,000 or £90,000 now that members of Parliament get as a salary, that's not all the benefits that they receive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 22 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Lots of you getting in touch. We've got so many questions this morning about this firebomber because clearly there's a problem with the police investigation into who this person is and why they won't tell us exactly where this person is actually from. We're also talking about letting prisoners out early, burglars in particular, because according to a piece of the Telegraph, the government wants to reduce the number of people in prisons because there's too many people in there, so burglars might only spend a third of their prison sentence actually in prison. Carol says this in Shoreham. Morning, Mike and Theo. In respect of prison sentences, surely criminals should always serve their whole time, but if they misbehave, a substantial addition will be made to the original term. Have a lovely sunny day. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? So you only get out on time with good behaviour as opposed to getting out early. I think that would be good. Carl in Shrewsbury says this: if they're letting prisoners out after only 1/3 of a sentence when they're behaving well, surely Lucy Connolly is top of that list. Somehow I can't see she's been in any trouble at all. Well, that's right. And there's actually a hearing coming up. The Free Speech Union is representing her, I believe, in a hearing this week on Thursday for an appeal to her sentence to see whether or not she will be released. I'd be very surprised if old Keith Starlin changes his view and gives the law courts the ability to release her, but she really should be released, having spent now about 9 months in jail of a 31-month sentence. I mean, I think lessons have been learned, for heaven's sake. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll take loads more of your calls. We'll take loads of your voice notes as well. Keep them coming. Right now, it's time to speak to William Yarwood, spokesperson for the Taxpayers Alliance, because guess what? Asylum hotel companies who have made massive amounts of money over the past 3 or 4 years have now declared that they might hand back some of the profits, but they're also talking about moving away from the hotel business into the private rental market, because of course that's now where the money's going to be. William, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show as always, mate.
Not at all. Good to see you. The companies that get all this taxpayers' money to house asylum seekers in hotels have done rather well. You know, the guy that runs one of the companies, the Asylum King as he's known, has now moved so far up the Sunday Times rich list that he's become a billionaire rather than just a millionaire in the space of a couple of years. But they're talking about handing back some of the money, but they're also talking about moving into sort of rental property market as opposed to the hotel market. So they're still going to make plenty of money, by the way. But what are they saying to this Home Affairs Committee today?
Yes, so they say that basically they want to move into what's called dispersed accommodation, which is specifically non-catered, non-security, sort of rented private rental accommodation. But as they said in the Home Affairs Select Committee yesterday, the problem they're facing is basically no private renters want to take asylum seekers, and I think, like, for very, very good reason, because they've seen how these hotels end up becoming, and they've seen how these people treat the areas that they live in. So why on earth would, private, renters want, people who own property want these people to move into, properties that could be handed out to young professionals or new families?
Yeah, the problem is, though, that an awful lot of these unscrupulous landlords who are quite happy and quite willing to turn their sort of maybe family dwelling homes into HMOs, multiple occupancy houses, basically, are going to make an absolute fortune, because look at the numbers. A report released last week said the 3 companies that have been mostly operating this asylum seeker hotel business have made combined profits of £383 million since 2019. I mean, that will persuade lots of people to rent out property, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that's certainly the case, but let's call that what it is, Mike. It's taxpayer profiteering of misery, basically. That's all it is. These 3 companies, Clear Springs, Serco, and Mears, have been enjoying these contracts left over from the Boris Johnson days, and because of the exponential rise in illegal immigration over the last 4 to 5 years, their profits have skyrocketed. I mean, one of the reasons their costs have gone up, and one of the reasons maybe they haven't earned as many profits as they would do, is because of the amount of security they've had to put around these hotels and in these hotels, and in order to keep these people inside of them, because otherwise they're likely to disappear into the community and possibly commit crimes. But also the services they provide inside of it, Mike. So they provide interpretation classes on English language speaking. They provide cultural sensitivity classes as well inside these hotels, and so on and so forth. And basically a lot of the money goes towards attempting essentially to prepare asylum seekers to come into the UK, when in reality what they should be doing is not any of that kind of stuff, and actually working with the Home Office to make sure these people are removed from our country as fast as possible. But hey, they're making money off it, so why would they want to get them removed?
Well, that's the thing. And one of the reasons, of course, they also need security is to try and make sure people don't come in and have a look around the hotel, because I was watching a video last night of one of those, sort of citizen journalist types who goes in with his camera, and he gets greeted by all these security guards going, "No, you're not allowed in here." And he's like, "Why not? I'm just walking around. I'm filming. I'm having a look. They're going to call the police on him." And he's like, "Well, call the police for what?" And then as he was filming, you could see various asylum seekers wandering about. A couple of them were going outside, getting onto, like Deliveroo bikes and stuff like that, because they're allowed to do that. And also on the notice boards, everywhere you look, there was, get your free eye test here. Here's how you apply for, an operation on the NHS. Here's how you register with the NHS. All sorts of advice for these people as to how they can milk the system.
Yeah, completely. I mean, we talk about, we talk about two-tier care, but also one element of two-tier Britain is the fact that asylum seekers have better access to, dentists, opticians, doctors, and so on and so forth, that average, ordinary, hard-working taxpayers do. I mean, I think there was a story a while ago about how in some asylum hotels, basically they have in-house doctors, like the doctors actually come to them. When's the last time a doctor from the National Healthcare Service has come to anybody's house, for crying out loud, right? So that's a luxury the majority of people just simply do not have. And yeah, they're enjoying, not just the free stuff, but also, a £50 daily allowance. They also have £90, for food. They get free trips to, different football stadiums and the like. Look, the 3 companies have been, rather enjoying themselves in terms of their profits. And actually, one interesting thing in the Select Committee yesterday, Mike, is they refused to say, when asked whether they thought profiteering off of illegal migration was moral or not. They refused to say yes or no, when obviously to me and you, Mike, and to many of your listeners, the answer is obviously no.
Yeah. I mean, I said this yesterday, and I wonder whether it's true, as to the system that they're currently using to house these migrants. I assume that they decided to start putting them into hotels because they didn't think they would need that many hotels. But because the business has boomed so much, and they've got so many people now coming, because they know that they'll be put up rather well and looked after rather well, then it's spiralled completely out of control. So, when the government decided it was a good idea, they thought they might be spending maybe $5 million a year instead of $5 million a day.
Yeah, I mean, one of the arguments they made at the committee was basically they never saw this, foresaw the long-term costs of illegal migration, basically. And they didn't think this was going to go on for that long, but of course it has, because the last Conservative government and this Labour government is completely incompetent at dealing with this issue. And obviously hotels were there to be temporary accommodation until these people either get approved or deported. But since our current legal system is the way that it is, and, various asylum cases can be gamed to the extent that people are let in for, minute rubbish rubbish reasons and actually not deported back to the countries that they originally originated from. They are essentially just stuck in hotels because, again, the government and indeed the companies did not have the long-term foresight. But like I said earlier, these three companies want to move into dispersed accommodation because, in their words, they're in this for the long game, right? And it's a good long-term business practice to move these people into dispersed accommodation, which proves, what their real incentives really are. It's not really to do with, deporting illegal immigrants. It's not really to do with protecting the British public or saving British taxpayers' cash. Really, they just want to, line their pockets a little bit more off of all
exactly.
misery.
And Keir Starmer's approach to this is non-existent because, while he made a big song and dance about, us living in a land of strangers and cutting back on immigration because it needs to be done significantly, he made no mention of the people coming here illegally. He made no mention of the asylum hotels or indeed the private housing that's being used to put these people in. And he doesn't appear to have a plan, apart from just repeating ad nauseam that he's going to smash the gangs. He's not doing anything.
No, absolutely not. I mean, the hysteria the other day about his speech, which I thought was incredibly, actually pretty tame, Mike, and also the fact that the majority of the British public actually completely agree with what Keir Starmer said, and also that I don't think there's any supporter of any large political party, maybe take the big three or the big four, that doesn't want immigration reduced. But the white paper specifically to do with legal immigration, it's only going to reduce legal immigration by about 100,000 a year. Yeah. So, if we're lucky, we might have 700,000 a year, which again is still significantly too many people coming to the country in the present year. Right. So yeah, Starmer can talk a big game, and he can talk maybe to the right of the last Conservative government on immigration. But what I care about, Mike, is results, and I don't think Labour's actually going to deliver on any of the promises they have around illegal migration or legal migration.
No, I totally agree with you, William. Good to speak to you. Thanks very much indeed. William Yarwood, spokesman for Taxpayers Alliance. There, Mike Gren here from a gloomy Teesside. The Green agenda has hit Teesside. From next year, the council will collect all recycling every week and normal waste every 2 weeks. Deary me. Well, that's not good, is it? And Ernie says this, Mike, it's no wonder this country's got a problem with people suffering from mental health, depression and anxiety. When was the last time we heard any good news? It's been doom and gloom for years. The nearest I came to jumping around with happiness and hope for the future was when Reform won so many council seats. Well, an awful lot of people did feel very happy about that. On the Friday morning after the Thursday vote, we were getting people calling us and saying how happy they felt for the first time. They had a smile on their face, a spring in their step, because they could see the future, and it wasn't filled with people like Tories and people like the Labour government. It was actually filled with new people like Sarah Pochin, the woman who won the Runcorn by-election for Reform, and a very fine, upstanding woman she is, and I think she's going to be a great asset not only to Reform, but to British parliamentary democracy. And yes, I think there is some good news there, and I think there is a good reason to be hopeful. But sadly, there are lots of bad reasons to not be hopeful. But you should always have it. How about this from Steve on Gary Lineker?
Morning, Mike. Steve in Hearts. Reference Gary Lineker. So he deleted the tweet. That's okay then. What about Lucy Connolly?
Yeah, well, I did make that point. She deleted the tweet as well. She's doing 31 months in prison. Gary Lineker, of course, is doing just about 2 more months at the BBC, which is quite similar, but not if you're Gary Lineker, obviously. 7:34.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:35. I'm Mike Graham, with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. How about this, right? We've just spotted this in the paper. Energy Secretary Ed Miliband is weighing up a scheme for workers to sacrifice part of their salary to buy a heat pump. What is this guy on? You know, not only have we got in the papers this morning a story from the guy who heads Centrica, basically the owners of British Gas, who's saying that under no circumstances will the move to net zero do anything to the price of electricity. He says it will definitely not reduce the price. Chris O'Shea, this is a guy who makes a pretty penny out of being the chief executive of Centrica, British Gas's parent company. He wrote on LinkedIn that the shift to renewable power will not materially reduce UK electricity prices from current levels. So the whole net zero sham is a crock of nonsense, as you all know. But now, under the scheme that Ed Miliband's pushing, salaried employees would repay in monthly instalments to rip out their boiler and take up heat pumps, which cost an average of 5,500 quid. So, you know, never mind paying your income tax, your national insurance, it's gone up. We'll just take a few quid every month off you so you can buy a heat pump. What about that? Great idea. Get lost, Ed. You know, in fact, when the next time you go to China for 33 grand of the taxpayers' money, why don't you just stay there, you know, and make yourself renewable, put yourself into some kind of, you know, coal-fired power station. Unbelievable. Jules in London says, good morning, Mike. Without dismissing the seriousness of the incident, someone with a grudge against Keir Starmer narrows it down to about 50 million people. It's true. Well, maybe when we find out the nationality of the assailant, we might be able to draw some conclusions. Let's get a voice note from Jay.
Morning, Mike. Fantastic show, as always. I just want to say I can't stand Keir Starmer whatsoever. But in this case, he's still our PM. And anyone coming here for a better life, you know, the land of opportunity, jobs, you know, you can come here, you can invent something, you can do well. You can start a business, or 400 bloody Turkish barbers in the same town. You can do all that in this country, right? And most people, especially the British people, they won't give you no stick for it. They'll just, oh, it's another shop. They'll probably use it. They'll come and have a haircut, like they normally do. But I tell you what, firebombing the PM, they've got to name and shame this person so we can get a true picture of who it is.
Absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. This is why we're asking the question, Jay. We need to know the nationality of the individual, you know, and we need to know the antecedents of the individual, i.e., you know, where they were from. You know, because if it turns out the guy was perhaps, you know, born here, but may have been radicalised in some way because he went over to Syria or Iraq and became part of ISIS and then came back and had a grudge against Keir Starmer. I don't know. Anything's possible. That's why, in order to stop the speculation, they need to tell us what's going on. Simple as that. And that's the car on fire. Imagine you living in that street and you've got a car parked next to that car that's on fire and you still don't know because the police haven't told you why this has happened. It's wrong. It's completely wrong. And it needs to change. Let's talk to Charles Feldman, US political analyst. No, I couldn't say it. Analyst. There you go. It's not that difficult. Charles, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. I mean, I have to start with this clip of Donald Trump in Saudi Arabia because it sort of slightly beggars belief. Check it out.
And I'm sure you will find many ways to have a good time. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. They have everything for young men to enjoy. You can hang out with all of
So there's the President of the United States of America, the 47th President of the United States of America, with Mohammed bin Salman, who's the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And as the sort of event came to an end, they played out YMCA by the Village People. When I first saw it on Twitter last night, I thought somebody's obviously spoofed this up. Somebody's obviously just put that music on top of the end of the meeting. But it turns out, no, it was actually, they actually played the song. It's almost like it's now the new US national anthem, Charles.
Well, if not that, it certainly seems to be the president's personal favorite and theme song.
Yeah.
You know, when he was painting, as I'm sure you know,
Yeah.
That song was ubiquitous.
Yeah, of course. But it's just, it sort of sums him up, doesn't it? You know, he's you know, all bets are off. The rules don't really apply. You never quite know what he's going to do next. I mean, he's also got this, when he came off Air Force One yesterday and walked down the steps, you know, all the talk was about the new plane that he's going to get from the Qataris, who are happy to give him a $650 million plane, which he thinks is absolutely fine because he's getting it for free. And maybe he's right, you know. I find just the way that he's carrying on is quite remarkable. And he also happens to do a $142 billion arms deal in the side off to the side somewhere.
Well, let's talk first about that so-called free 747 that he intends to get as a gift.
Yeah.
It's not actually going to be so free because one of the things that the intelligence community in the U.S. is pointing out is that before that thing can fly with the President of the United States in it, it's going to take, ready for this, at least a couple of years to retrofit, to go through it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure there are no, hidden cameras, hidden microphones, sort of thing. And then it has to be beefed up in the way that the current Air Force One is beefed up with anti-missile systems, the whole thing.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Mike, it's going to cost taxpayers millions of dollars to get that free plane back in the air.
Yeah. And is it not the case, though, that one of the reasons why they've given it or offered it is that the actual refurb of Air Force One is taking longer than it was expected to, and that, instead of getting a new Air Force One plane, they get this instead?
Yeah, absolutely right. The president is very annoyed at Boeing, which of course makes the 747.
Yeah.
They had this order for new 747s for a number of years now.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of delays. Boeing has had some rough economic times. And so the projection is that they can't have a new 747 ready for a few years. But as I pointed out, the free one that the president may end up getting from Qatar is not going to be so free anyway.
No, it's not. But maybe he can save the money that he was going to spend on Boeing and spend it on getting this one sorted out. So, I'm not. I can see your point, and I can see that could be problematic. But I just think it's quite. I'd like everything with Trump. I just think it's quite funny because people are getting the knickers in a twist about it, going, "It's disgraceful." It's corruption. I think your point is more important, that you'd want to make sure that it wasn't sort of fitted with loads of listening devices.
Absolutely, and again, the existing Air Force One is not a normal airplane.
Right.
It has the ability to deflect missiles. It has the ability to refuel in the air, for example, so that the president can be airborne for whatever reason, 24/7.
Yeah.
The aircraft that we're now talking about that would be a gift does not currently have that capability.
Right. And finally, how important was the meeting yesterday? I mean, clearly Trump feels that the Middle East is where it's at right now. The deal that he's done with Saudi Arabia is going to open up all kinds of investment opportunities. I think the Saudis have already promised a load of money to invest in the United States as well. So it's an interesting time in the Middle East, obviously, with what's going on in Gaza and with the Qataris kind of, trying to maneuver themselves in there as well. What do you make of it all?
Well, in terms of the arms package that we're talking about, it is by some estimates the largest arms deal that the U.S. has made, at least in recent history. So it is not an inconsequential amount of money that we're talking about. But there's another reason why the president is so intent on doing business with Saudi Arabia. Now, his critics will argue that that's because his family is making a lot of money off of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the president does have this desire, and he had it a few years ago, to eventually get Saudi Arabia to agree to some sort of a treaty with Israel. And if he could achieve that, that would be a major diplomatic coup.
Yeah, it would be indeed, and it would be very good for the whole region, it would have to be said. Charles Feldman, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed, US political analyst. Morning, Mike and team. With reference to that poor guy wrongly imprisoned for all those years, says Keith, I'd like to think the advances in DNA technology will help to trap the real murderer. Tragic case in so many ways, says Keith to the Midlands. Yeah, this guy who was wrongfully imprisoned for 38 years. He's on the front page of the Daily Mail this morning. Incredible story, really. He comes out of jail for a murder he didn't commit. For 21-year-old florist Diane Sindel in 1986. He was dubbed the Beast of Birkenhead after the brutal killing. Peter Sullivan, he was only 30 when he went into jail. He's now 68, but he says he's not bitter and he's not angry, which is quite extraordinary. Let's have a quick word with Mark, who's got a heat pump story for us. Mark, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Just a bit interested. Obviously, we're talking about heat pumps earlier on. So we moved to Lincolnshire in 2022.
Right.
We're now on our third heat pump because they last about a year.
Really?
Before they die.
Okay. So when they say renewable, they really mean it then?
They really do mean it, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what the second-hand market's like. To be fair to the company that keeps coming out, they're delivering a third one today, and
right.
Pretty good. And,
but why does it need replacing though? Does it just run out of steam or something? Literally.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I don't think it actually gets to the point where it's actually got steam involved in it. But I just think it just doesn't like working. As the latest one has got it's been modified since the last edition. It's now cheaper to rip it all out.
Okay.
And put a new one in.
And so do you have to pay for, every time you get a new one, you have to pay for a new one?
Well, as luck would have it, no. So far, the company's been a gold star status. They keep replacing and keep extending the guarantees.
All right.
It's great, but I'd just like the same. I'd like the same heat pump that Ed Miliband's got, because clearly, obviously, he hasn't got a problem with his.
No, obviously not. People say they're very noisy as well. Do you find that?
No, not so bad. I mean, if we're in the right place, they're okay. But you do hear them.
And can I ask what you spent on the first one?
Well, luckily we didn't, because when we bought the place, it had already been installed. So,
okay.
But I have heard varying reports, £5,000 to £10,000, but depending what size you have.
And what's the heat like?
Actually, to be fair, pretty good when they're working. Yeah, very cold when they're not, though.
Right. So when it's not working and you're waiting for another one to be brought in, you sit there shivering.
Yeah, basically, like the last couple of weeks where we had the coldest spell in May for quite some considerable time, and the heat pump decided that it had enough.
Right.
So, as a consequence of that, coats in May.
Yeah. Well, listen, I admire your indefatigability, as George Galloway would tell you, because you keep asking for new ones, you keep getting them. 3 heat pumps, thank you, Mark, in Lincolnshire. 3 heat pumps in 3 years. That's one a year, because they keep breaking down. Somebody else must have a story like that. And how much on earth are you supposed to spend on these things? 5 to 10 grand, and they don't work? So the company brings you another one, then another one? How soon before the third one breaks down, you have to get a fourth one? It's madness, isn't it? 7:47.
I put it in writing, and they basically replied and said, we can't remove them out of your theatre, but what we can do is we can cancel your surgery, we can move you to a different doctor with a different consultant at an unknown date. And I couldn't believe it. I said, well, you're prolonging my pain now because it needs to be done. It's like an emergency. With endometriosis, it's all over my bowels. It was a big operation. It was a joint case for the colorectal team. A lot of organisation went in. They just bypassed all that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:50. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. We mentioned Gary Lineker earlier on. We were looking at the stories in the papers this morning. We're going to talk to Jake Wallace-Simons in a moment, author of Israelophobia, the newest version of the oldest hatred, and what to do about it. Let's get a voice note, though, from Phil.
I'm Mike, Phil from Nottingham. Gary Lineker, yeah, it's a plank, isn't he? He doesn't realise what he's doing. But here's another one for you. And I can't check because I was blocked, but has Carol Vorderman said anything either?
She's gone very quiet on social media, funnily enough, since Labour have got in, because apparently all the things that she used to be upset about the Tories for, she's not upset so much for Labour anymore. So she just every now and again she puts a tweet out about Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Doesn't say anything about anti-Semitism or indeed Gary Lineker. But let's talk to Jake Wallace-Simons, because Gary Lineker's, many people believe, overstepped the mark this time by putting up a tweet which he later deleted, which featured an emoji of a rat while he was referring to the state of Israel. Jake, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, Lineker pushes the wrong button yet again, and seems to. I think he willfully misunderstands the whole situation, doesn't he? Because I think it's wrong to say he doesn't know what he's doing, but he's clearly got it all wrong, hasn't he?
Well, I think we should say from the start that clearly Gary Lineker is not an anti-Semite. He's just one of those people who happens to make the same points that anti-Semites make quite a lot.
Yes.
And the latest occasion has been when he's retweeted or shared this post which lambasted Zionists alongside a picture of a rat. Yeah. Obviously escaped his attention. But this is true to form. I mean, his interest in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict seems to be quite recent. It's derives from October the 7th, actually from October the 8th. On October the 7th, he didn't tweet about the massacre in Israel at all, the Hamas massacre. He only tweeted one thing, which was, Super Spurs are top of the league. Right. That was his contribution when Jews were being massacred in their hundreds and even over 1,000 on that day. And yet after that, he seems to have been very, very interested in Israel's response as it tried to defend itself against this jihadi menace, which, by the way, would kill us if it could. And his greatest hits have involved retweeting something which is called Israelis, and described them as having incomprehensible evil. He signed a letter, of course, defending that BBC documentary that was made by a Hamas son. And look, this is the man who took £1.6 million from Qatar, which is a slave state which supports Hamas. It's 300,000 Qataris lording it over literally modern slaves. And supports, is the main funder of Hamas, harbours Hamas leaders, owns Al Jazeera, which is a Hamas mouthpiece. So you can sort of see where he's coming from. It's all very unfortunate, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is all very unfortunate. I was just reading a piece before we spoke of Nicole Lampertz, who put out, who's a prominent journalist, who writes an awful lot about this. She calls herself a Jewish journalist, so I'll call her that as well. She said last Thursday he posted a clip on his Instagram feed comparing Israelis to Nazis. On Saturday he posted one calling Zionists the most anti-Semitic people in the world right now, and on Sunday another one which said, as we've been saying, it didn't start on the 7th of October. And then came the rat. So it's not as if this is a one-off, which he's now being told to take down. And it's not now that it's finally sort of reached a head, if you like. I mean, he's been doing this, and she's calling it the sort of online radicalisation of a footballer, which is kind of true, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's becoming football's Kanye West.
Yes.
He's only a couple of steps away, isn't he, really?
Right. He really is.
It's getting worse and worse.
And it's almost like, and this is what he did before the BBC made their decision finally to let him go. He seemed to be deliberately provocative, and you wonder whether it's because he's had a couple of glasses of wine at lunch or something, I don't know. But he seems to sort of reach into his pocket every now and again and just think, let's see what happens if I do this.
Well, look, I mean, this is, he is football's answer to Kanye West, I think, and he is becoming worse and worse. And we can see, I think, that what he's really doing is articulating a common view that's held by many at the BBC, and that's really the problem. Yeah. He feels, look, we all think this, let's just say it. And the problem is that we don't all think this, but maybe in the BBC, a lot of people do. Yeah. So he feels like he's speaking up for the majority view, which actually is a fringe minority of people who have some sympathies for, that way inclined, and rather less for the Middle East sole democracy. And he feels like he's a truth teller and a freedom fighter.
Yeah. I know, which is so misguided, and that's what I mean by the problem with somebody like him who has got whether we like it or not, an awful lot of influence on social media because he's got so many followers, and so an awful lot of people see what he puts out. And, you know, I'm not one for censorship, but I just think he's being very unwise and very stupid to fall, as you say, for the sort of Hamas propaganda lines.
Exactly, and you know, it seems that the further you go to the left, the more likely people are to be anti-Semitic. That's just the dynamic. For some bizarre reason, that's where we find ourselves. In fact, I know why it is. It's because of Soviet propaganda during the Cold War, which has influenced that way of thinking. But like you say, for somebody with that massive platform to use it in this way, to draw attention once and again to one particular conflict in the Middle East, no other conflict in the world that claims far more lives, and not only this one conflict, but one side within it, as the Middle East's only democracy struggles to defend its people against a horrendous jihadi menace. Right. And yet they're the ones who he keeps criticising. It's all really a bit rum, and I think that you know, good, right-thinking people should just turn their backs on the man, allow him to take his £1.6 million from slave state Qatar and be off with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the calls for him to be fired by the BBC will no doubt come to nothing because the BBC probably secretly admire what he's saying.
Well, the BBC's response to any of these anti-Semitic scandals is always to go into a defensive crouch, deny, ignore, hope that it goes away, and eventually, if it's forced to, issue some compromised, mealy-mouthed apology and then carry on with business as usual. Yeah. I can't see any reason why it should be any different now.
No, quite. And just one final thing, Jake, before I let you go. Telegraph this morning saying that they believe that the investigation now into the firebombing of Keir Starmer's house is looking at the possibility that a sort of hostile state may well be involved. If it turns out, I'm not saying this because I don't know, but they're not revealing the nationality of this individual, a 21-year-old man who supposedly bears a grudge against Keir Starmer. My suggestion is that, you know, it wouldn't be at all surprising if it turns out that this young individual turns out to be an asylum seeker or operating for the Iranians or something like that, in which case this becomes a much more serious story, and I think we surely should be told more detail of what we now know about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a counter-terror operation, so of course it's going to have to be shrouded in secrecy, although as we saw with the Southport debacle, sometimes that secrecy is taken way too far. Yeah. But look, you know, we can't preempt the results of this inquiry, but if it is an Iranian, it wouldn't be any surprise. The Iranian Terror Overseas Militia, the IRGC, operates in Britain. We know that. In fact, a security source told me about a year ago that it was the main threat that keeps them awake at night above all other threats in Britain. And yet it's not banned here. We haven't banned it because we want to keep diplomatic channels open with Iran. And look, that's a whole other debate, but basically this terror group is able to operate without being banned in Britain. It's carried out more than 20 assassination and murder plots in Britain over the last year or so. Right. Recently, one major one was foiled on the Israeli embassy, and the government seems to be playing catch-up. Now, I know that the Iranians, after this latest one was foiled a couple of weeks ago, the Iranians were very worried that Britain was going to snap back sanctions on the regime, was going to expel its diplomat, was going to take actual action, and yet we did nothing. They were scared of that. They didn't need to be scared because we took no action. And so I think that we do need to be toughening up. And if this does turn out that it is an Iranian attack, then it will come as no surprise and will be really a sign of British complacency in the face of this Iranian terror threat.
Exactly right. Jake Wallace-Simons, thank you very much indeed for talking to us, author of Israelophobia, the newest version of The Oldest Hatred and What to Do About It. Let's get a quick voice note from Damon.
Morning, Mike. Damon from Wigan. Just on the issue, what you've been talking about as regards a softer Brexit deal next week. If this all comes to pass, that we are going back into the European Union, that is me finished with voting. I voted since I was 16, but if we're taken back into Brexit, back into Europe, then that's me done. I will never vote again, and I cannot believe that there will not be outcry in this country. Cheers, Mike. Have a nice day.
Damon, thank you very much indeed. Very, very wise words. And yes, is he selling us out? Of course he is. It's the only thing he knows how to do. We've got loads more. Esther McVeigh coming up after the news. I'm Mike Graham. This is Morning Glory.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that
shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 8, I'm Mike Graham. A couple of big stories for you this morning. 38 years in jail for a murder he didn't commit. Peter Sullivan, now 68 years of age, was locked up when he was 30 for the murder of 21-year-old florist Diane Sindall in 1986. He was released from jail after a DNA sample turned up and proved that he actually wasn't there. He actually didn't do it. Now we know that the killer, whoever it is still at large. And he says he's not bitter or angry, and he's going to begin repairing what I made from the driftwood that is my life. Extraordinary story. We'll bring you more on that as we go through the rest of the show. Also, the big story on the front page, of course, of the Telegraph concerns the firebombing of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's home, his car, and another flat in a building where he used to rent many, many years ago when he was with a different partner. Hostile state linked to Starmer firebombs. We've been talking about it this morning. The police, the counter-terror police, and the government are not releasing any information about the nationality of a 21-year-old man who's been arrested and is being investigated for arson and the possibility of endangering lives. A very serious charge if it is brought against him. All we know from him is that he's from a place called Sydenham in south-east London, but they are refusing to release any details about his nationality. I say that that is dangerous and preposterous, because at the end of the day, people will speculate as to whether there is a link to some country like Iran, whether there's a link to a country like Russia, whether there's a link to a country like Qatar. Nobody knows. Afghanistan, it could be somebody from ISIS, one of the 400 jihadis who's come back to Britain having committed all sorts of horrific war crimes in that region of the world and is now wandering the streets of Britain. We just don't know. Amanda says this: Mike Ray, the attack on Starmer's home is a personal attack or not, I see this as an attack on the position of Prime Minister, in which case we, the citizens, have a right to know all the details. We'll be talking to Esther McVeigh coming up. She's an MP, former Minister for Common Sense. The question is, MPs are now possibly in the line of fire. They're being told, look out for anything unusual. Oh, great. OK, what, like a bloke wandering around outside your house with a firebomb in his hand? You know, what's supposed to happen next? Let's get a voice note from Joanne on immigration.
Morning, Mike. Joanne from Norfolk. So there is no plan to stop immigration at all. You've got the trade deal with India, more migrants. You've got the so-called freedom of movement for 18 to 24-year-olds with Europe, when our kids can barely get out of bed, let alone arrange a job in a foreign country. And you and I know that the ones that will be coming over will not be the best of the best in terms of the youth of the EU. They will be all of those migrants that have gone there and been given passports, the same ones that are now rocking up on the beaches at Calais and waiting to get over here at our expense. The expense of our pensioners, the expense of our farmers, the expense of everybody who's having to pay less in terms of their actual salaries because their employers won't pay them because of the national insurance contributions.
Yeah, absolutely spot on, Joanne. I'm afraid every single word of what you just said is absolutely and utterly correct. We've got more like that coming up. We're going to talk about the immigration policy of this Labour government, which appears to be pretty confused after all, does it not? Let's talk to Esther McVey, MP, former Minister for Common Sense. Esther, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
We'll talk about the rather, shall we say, quixotic immigration policy that Keir Starmer seems to have come up with this week out of nowhere. He's looked into Nigel Farage's pocket and basically pulled out a bit of paper with some notes on it and gone, oh, I know, this will work. But of course, people now say immigration is the #1 subject on their minds in this country. There's a YouGov poll in The Sun. We knew that. We've been saying it for months and months and months. But let me just start off with this idea of the hostile state being linked in the Telegraph this morning to this firebombing of Keir Starmer's home. I think it needs to be said, does it not, that if there is information that we know about this assailant, this suspect who's been arrested, surely we should know what that information is, shouldn't we?
Well, I think we need a bit more information. You can't tell people to be aware, watch out if you see anything that you might feel endangers you if you know nothing about what to be on the look for.
Exactly.
I mean, usually you'll know a lot more once somebody is charged, but actually they know now that people want more information. They know how quick the media, social media is to get onto a story and for the story to grow. Really, they should have got ahead of this and put the information out there so there isn't speculation and there isn't people just talking about it and then just wanting to know more. I think they should have got ahead of this.
Yeah.
And the other thing you're saying now, which is unacceptable, is people thinking that in one way or another politicians are fair game.
Yeah.
They are not. Security needs to be tightened. We need to say we're not soft on crime. Anybody doing this will feel the full weight of the law.
Absolutely right. But I'm getting a lot of comments this morning from viewers and listeners. This one from Sam, which is quite right, I think. He says, you know that if this was a British person who could be called far right or was a reform voter, they would have had it out there by now in terms of the name and the nationality. And I'm afraid that's the way people think now, because they believe that whenever a name is withheld and whenever a sort of nationality is withheld, then the government and the police are doing that for a reason.
And this is why I said they should have got ahead of the story. You could have easily preempted that people wanted to know this. They could have seen how far could they go in giving information, because it does feed into the whole, as you mentioned there, the two-tier society that we are living in. Who is protected and who is not? Who do we talk about and who don't we? Who are the villains and who are the victims as it is perceived by this government?
Yeah, absolutely right. And I mean, it's hard to know, isn't it? Because the words change with every single week that passes. You know, a couple of weeks ago, Keir Starmer wasn't really that bothered about immigration. Suddenly this week, he's decided that we need to cut back on it significantly because he wants to promote British values and British workers. But at the same time as doing that, he's invited a load of Indian workers to come and work here without paying national insurance. And he's also now on the brink of allowing a load of European workers to come and undercut British workers as well. So which is it?
Mike, you know as well as I know, this man would say anything to cling on to power. Do you know what I think he's going to say next week when he sees maybe the threat of reform? We'll find out he actually voted reform. And after that, when he sees the threat of Brexit and he sells us down the Swanee over Brexit, he'll tell us actually he's a Brexiteer and he voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
This man would say absolutely anything. And I'm just surprised anybody believes a word he says. One of your other callers, he said he would look after pensioners. He has not. Look after businesses. He has not. Look after farmers. He has not. And as you say, this latest guff about what he's going to do to bring immigration figures down. Again, he is a lawyer. He reads a brief put before him. This is a political strategist who said, Keir, you better say this. You're losing votes. You're losing the working class. Read this out. He probably didn't know what he was saying until he read it out. And so he did, like a lawyer with a brief. But really, if he was serious about bringing immigration down, he wouldn't have made the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, who not long ago was holding a sign up proudly on the internet saying, refugees welcome. No, if he was serious, he'd be coming out of the ECHRA. He would be stopping some of the benefits, stopping the hotel and housing here, and he'll be putting a cap, none of which he's done.
No, of course not. And Yvette Cooper was doing the rounds yesterday. Didn't come on this show, of course, because I don't know why, but I guess she must be frightened of being asked the wrong question. But she got asked the wrong question on GMB. Have a look at this.
I think what you heard the Prime Minister say at the beginning of the clip that you played was to talk about the diverse nation, and he celebrated that.
Cooper, I'm sorry, at the beginning, for 5 minutes of his speech, from the beginning of his speech, for 5 minutes, he did not talk about the benefits of immigration. And then he used this phrase, island of strangers. So I repeat the question for the third time. Is it a phrase you knew about, that you recognise, and that you would use?
No, but I think that's the problem. The immediate phrase that he said immediately before it was to talk about the diverse nation. And then he said, yeah, immigration needs to be controlled and managed. And I think there's a real challenge.
He said we risk becoming an island of strangers. And I just ask you again, did you know he was going to use that echo?
No, but the point is that this is...
And would you use that phrase?
I honestly think the point that he is making here is about we have to have controlled and managed. We have to have people who are able to speak English, that we have to make sure that we've got rules that are respected and enforced.
Yeah, so we need to have rules that are respected and enforced. And Esther, I'm not going to pretend that the Tories did a great job of looking after the borders of this country, because they didn't. And Robert Jenrick now says that, they should do more, they should have done more. That's why he resigned as immigration minister. But, the ball is now in a different court. It's in Keir Starmer's court. And he didn't even mention in his speech the illegal migrants coming here on boats, which are not really small boats anymore. They're pretty big bloody boats. And something like nearly 700 of them came over just on the day that he made that speech.
Yeah, no, he didn't. And I think that probably shows that he isn't sincere on what he wants to do and how it needs to be tackled. You're right, and I'm not going to defend the Tories there and what happened. I'm probably further to the right than most of our leaders have been, and I did argue the case that we needed significantly less immigration into this country, but we are where we are. Rishi Sunak actually at the end did make some bold moves, which was stopping the dependents coming in and making those deals with Albania to send back criminals. So when Labour does see, which they will see, some falls in immigration numbers, it won't be really what they've done, it will be what Rishi Sunak had done. But we do need to be much more serious on stopping these immigration levels. I've said quite openly I'd have a sort of a moratorium for so many years until we get a grip of the numbers in the country, much further than other people here. But Labour are just talking tough, like they did with Smash the Gangs, and it meant nothing. It was an empty, hollow slogan, and I'm afraid we'll be getting that again.
Yeah, but has he at least done something good, which is to make it possible for people to feel that they can talk about this issue without being labelled a bigot or, a racist or somebody who is a little Englander, because that's what it used to be like, because only the Tories would talk like this. I mean, I had Nigel Farage on yesterday, and he said if he'd come out with some of the stuff that Keir Starmer came out out with in his speech, particularly the comment about strangers in your own land, which has been sort of said to be an echo of what Enoch Powell once said back in the 60s. He said he'd have been literally strung up. He would have probably been chased out of Parliament. He probably would have been suspended for, you know, for being, you know, completely out of touch with the British people, who are very welcoming, and we all love immigrants and we all want them all to come. You know, now it's beginning to look like it's only the nutters and the mad lefties who are standing there going, refugees are welcome.
Mike, you are right. In that regard, there is now an acceptance that it is something that can be talked about. And I think for too long, politicians have felt it was a taboo subject, too sensitive to talk about. And this is why this problem has built up for so long. So in that regard, if it does allow these conversations without being labelled as somehow as a horrific individual for talking about it, you're right, that's a positive thing. But with the ability to talk about it, you do have to take the steps to reduce immigration. And I feel that Starmer's words will be hollow and not do that, but it really is important you take action, because otherwise you will be letting the public down yet again, building up false hopes that something's going to be done and let them down again, which would be unacceptable.
Yeah, absolutely right. A couple of stories about net zero this morning, and we got Ed Miliband apparently looking into the idea of possibly getting people to pay a sort of an amount of money taken off their salary in order to save up for a heat pump, which sounds complete madness to me. Also, the leader of Centrica, the chief executive, Chris O'Shea, putting out a statement on LinkedIn that basically says that net zero will not, in fact, reduce electricity prices at all. He says it will definitely not do that. It might make more price stability possible, but it will not bring prices down. I mean, when are they going to put the final nail in the coffin of net zero?
Well, I just wish they'd said this before the election. He obviously knew that. It's a pity the boss of Centrica didn't say that then. It's equally, you know, it begs the question, did Ed Miliband of the Labour Party lie before the election, or was it just gross incompetence before the election that they were telling everybody that energy prices would be coming down, which they're not? Look, day by day now we're hearing stories, this net zero is a con. Even Ed Miliband must think it's a con, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be doing flying around the world on jets to go and have meetings with people. He'd be doing it by Zoom. There's the hypocrisy, isn't it? So yes, let's finally say net zero, what a con. What a mistake. Let's reduce energy prices. Let's not push our businesses and manufacturing overseas. And let's get our oil and gas supplies working again. And let's have our own energy, so we've got security, affordability and reliability of our own energy.
Yeah, absolutely right. And one from Tom in Merseyside, I'll read you this. I bet President Trump didn't have to give away any fishing rights or let any free movement go to get an arms deal with the Saudis. It's Donald Trump going to Saudi Arabia, doing an incredible arms deal, $142 billion worth of arms sales, the biggest arms deal, I think, in the history of the United States of America. But, I mean, Tom's right, isn't he? Because we're hearing from Starmer that apparently part of this migrant crackdown is going to be sort of siphoned off into the European Union, because he's trying to get closer ties with Europe. He's giving away more fishing rights, and he's going to open up the gates to a lot of young Europeans to come here and do work that British workers could otherwise do.
Well, this will be a massive betrayal. I mean, is this why he's talking tough now? Because he's going to let us down considerably on the 19th of May when they have the first sort of signing up an agreement. They've already warned of Parliament. We've got a bill coming through for alignment of regulation. This is not what we wanted. We always wanted control of our borders. The country voted Brexit, and I have to say, I think Starmer will be booted out of office if he betrays the country on Brexit. And we know now, don't we, when his lips are moving, don't necessarily believe what he's saying.
No, he doesn't seem to have a bone in his body that has truth written on it. I mean, he just doesn't seem to understand or know what the truth is. And people said to me yesterday, you know, even if he wasn't a very good lawyer, as a lawyer, he must understand the benefit of actually speaking the truth, because it's how you collect evidence. It's how you win cases. You know, it's all about the truth. He doesn't seem to know what the truth is.
Yeah, but his main mission now is staying in power, whatever that takes. So that's the means justify the end, because he thinks the Starmer project is the one that we need. So this superiority, which is statism, I know best, the state knows best, and the public will just need to follow me. And I think that is a very sinister form of government for a country that believes in democracy. And I always say the people are actually right in this country. The people are often ahead of the politicians on all issues, immigration, Brexit. The country is ahead. And I actually think Starmer would do a lot better if he actually listened to what the public are saying, not pretending it and coming out with a sort of a statement pretending. We don't want pretense. We want real actions.
Exactly right. Esther, good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Esther McVey, MP, former Minister for Common Sense, still talking an awful lot of common sense. Let's get a voice note from Ben on prisoners.
Hi Mike, it's Ben from Prague. Just listening to your stories regarding the prison system wanting to release people after a third of their sentence, people who have done stuff like burglaries and small-time crimes like that. The problem is I can't see how they're going to reduce any numbers in the prisons when they don't arrest those people in the first place. They don't even investigate those crimes. So if there's no one in prison for burglary, how are they going to release people early for it?
It's a very good question. You're right. Because they solve so few burglaries. I mean, anybody who gets locked up for burglary must have done about 1,000 burglaries. If you've only done the first sort of 200 or 300, there's no chance of you going to prison. But it's a very good point Ben makes, because you know what will happen if they go, oh, we haven't got anybody in for burglary, but a couple of murderers here, we'll get them out a bit early. A couple of rapists, we'll get them out a bit early. They'll suddenly just start letting people out a bit early in order to make room for some more bad people to come in and serve some more minuscule sentences for terrible crimes. Mary in Northampton says this: Mike, love listening to your show. Keep up the great work of transparency on the subject of immigration. So that people in this country are kept fully informed on the cost to the taxpayer, they should show a separate line on your payslip showing the percentage of the tax you pay that goes to keeping the illegal immigrants. Also, a separate line on your council tax bill that goes towards immigration, and so on. Anyone then supporting uncontrolled immigration can see the direct effect on them, which just might show the limp lefties how much they are personally contributing. It might just open their eyes to the problem in the country. How many days a week are we working just to pay for the problem? It's a very good point. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Certainly in some councils you see a line under which they tell you exactly where the money is going. And I think that's generally speaking a good thing. Transparency is what we want and what we deserve and what we require. Coming up, Mercy Muroki's here. She's done a big column in The Sun today about immigration and the taboo subject, which is now finally something that we can all talk about. This is Talk.
I think the whole conversation has changed. You know, some of us have got scars on our backs from fighting for this stuff for years and years, years in which it was not just unfashionable, but completely taboo to be aggressively questioning and challenging the scale of uncontrolled immigration. You know, those of us that have been at the forefront of this political debate have been called every name under the sun, and that's fine. We're used to it. You stick your neck out, you've got to be ready.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 8:25, with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Alan from Peterborough says this: a large proportion of the buy-to-let property owners are based abroad. They have no allegiance to the areas they buy their properties in, nor to the UK. They're going to snap this migrant deal up, make a fortune from it, and pay no tax in the process. You may well be right. Certainly there's going to be an awful lot of unscrupulous landlords who are going to be very happy to take the government shilling in order to get a 5-year guaranteed deal to house migrants, basically, with all bills paid, all repairs done, Bob's your uncle. Suddenly you can become a millionaire overnight. Let's talk to Mercy Muroki, though. She's got a great piece in The Sun this morning as Labour MPs bash the migrants blitz because they can't stand the way that Keir Starmer was talking, like somebody from Reform, they say, or even possibly Enoch Powell. She says decent, tolerant people have been gaslit into silence by the hysterical left. Wanting to reduce immigration does not make you a bigot. Very well said. Mercy, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks very much for joining us. I mean, it's true, isn't it? I mean, I just asked that question to Esther McVeigh. You know, has Starmer at least done one thing for this country, which is to make this subject something that people can actually talk about openly without in some way being shut down, as you say, by the hysterical left?
Yeah, and I think, look, in the article I say, you know, this is him flip-flopping, let's be honest. He was calling for a second referendum a while ago. You know, he was definitely part of the sort of open borders movement, really. But to be honest, if he's flip-flopped on this and this is now what his position is, I'll take it. I'll take it, Mike, quite frankly, because he has now reckoned with the fact that this is what the British public want.
Yeah.
And this idea that, you know, Keir Starmer, of all people, is somehow now a fascist just because he's pointed out the fact that actually immigration levels of 700 plus last year, it went up to nearly 1 million a couple of years ago. That's unsustainable. That is not good for the economy. And if he's now taken the position that this is what Labour should be doing, I kind of commend that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, you will have seen, I'm sure, like I have over the last few days since Starmer's speech, all these sort of, you know, very, very heart-filled tweets by lefties who have said, you know, my father was an immigrant, he came to this country, he started a business, he didn't speak any English, and now, you know, I'm the result of it. I went to university, I'm second generation, da da da. And it's like, well, that's all fine, it's great. Absolutely, that's what immigration's meant to be. It's meant to be an opportunity for people to come to this country from other countries and do well and become part of the community. That's not what we're seeing. That's not what the illegal migrants are doing, and it's not what an awful lot of the people coming here to so-called study are doing either.
Yeah, and you know, I am also an immigrant. I'm a first generation immigrant. I came here as a child. I didn't speak English either. My mum came here. My mum still works in a care home, earning very, very little.
Yeah.
So I am very much, you know, of that immigrant class of people who came here to make themselves, you know, give themselves a better life. And I, of course, completely understand that argument, that this is not about immigrants themselves at all.
Yeah.
And that's not what this is. This is about the scale of immigration. This is about the fact that we are already, even if you stopped immigration today, we would still have a crumbling NHS. We would still have, you know, schools completely overcrowded. We would still have all the problems that we have. And we're just adding pretty much fuel to the fire by sustaining these enormous levels of immigration. And that's the point. It's about the scale of the problem.
Yes.
And until the government can prove that they can tackle, you know, the issues with public services, that they can, you know, have growth without relying on immigration overseas, until we can prove that we can do that, I don't think we should be, you know, importing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people every single year.
No, of course not. And I mean, the fact that you even have to make that argument is nonsensical in itself, because, you know, we know that finite is a word and it applies to everything. You know, the reason that the NHS has got a lot of problems, it might be that there are many people who come to this country and end up working in the NHS and in the care system and all of that. But the problem for the NHS is that they also use the NHS. And, you know, London, for example, is a much more busy centre of population now than it's ever been. You know, I'm not sure we even know what the full population is of this country. So many people are coming here, sort of 10 to the dozen every single day. It's kind of ironic that 7 boats actually arrived on the very day that Keir Starmer made that speech. All Border Force boats bringing people in. And it has to stop. But he's made no comment about that, and all he said is he wants to reduce the numbers by, say, 100,000. As you say, it's a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, and I guess this is, his policy really on small boats is clearly not working. They're still very much coming thick and fast.
Yeah.
So he definitely needs to do far more on that front. This was really about the legal migration sort of policy, which is absolutely right. He should be addressing that legal migration side as well. I think the reforms he's brought in, or he plans to bring in, they will go some way to reducing net migration. It will be somewhat of a deterrence to people who were kind of planning to come to abuse some of the loopholes, perhaps. And I don't actually think that it's useful to kind of put numbers on it. What I want to see, essentially, we've got in this country 1.6 million unemployed people.
Yeah.
Okay. We don't need to be bringing in this level of immigration to plug the gap. We've got people here who can plug the gap of, that we need in terms of the labour market. I want to see a government that's absolutely focused on making sure the people in this country, the 1.6 million unemployed, are getting in work, that we're reducing that big welfare bill that we have as a result of all these people being out of work, that we're training people, that young men who, that proportion of young men who are not in employment, education or training gone up 40% since the pandemic. What are we doing to train up these young men, to give them apprenticeships? That's the kind of conversation I want to hear, rather than let's just keep importing workers from abroad.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Good to talk to you, Mercy. Thank you very much indeed. Mercy Baroki, today's Sun columnist on page 10, talking all about why it's not a bigoted scenario to reduce immigration, to want to reduce immigration, and want to talk about it even. But the lefties, of course, will tell you otherwise. They'll say, oh, my goodness me, Keir Starmer, he's now gone right of Attila the Hun, because he wants to actually stop people coming here who are not actually welcome here and who shouldn't be coming here because they don't have a place when they get here other than the one provided for them by the state, by the taxpayers, by you, effectively. I've got this from Janice in gloomy Perth. She says, we have a heat pump. It's OK trying to push them onto householders, but what they fail to emphasise is that a property has to be pretty airtight and well insulated. Otherwise, you don't get efficient running. They're also quite bulky and noisy if you have the system located inside the house. Ours is in the garage, but not everyone has a garage. Have a great day. Well, indeed, that's right. And we hear many, many people with problems about heat pumps. And one is Sarah, who's called in from Northamptonshire. Sarah, very good morning to you. Oh, my goodness me. I'm not sure whether your heat pump's running your phone, but it doesn't sound very good. Can we try and get a slightly better line there? Can we try again? Yeah, well, I can, but you sound like a Dalek, so we'll have to get you back. But get you back after this, right? We'll give us a little break. We'll come back to you. Donald Trump is brilliant, says Margaret in Birmingham. He loves to dance, and he's a great president. 1 week in, and he gets rid of illegals. If only. I know. And now he's done a big arms deal with Saudi Arabia. Tremendous. We'll try and get our last caller back, Sarah in Northamptonshire. And also, we're going to be talking, coming up, to Matthew Topham about Thames Water, who have a terrible CEO and a terrible track record and pretty much can't really do anything right. What's going on? It's 8:33.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:34. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until the witching hour of 10 o'clock. And then, so Julie Hartley-Brew will be here for the following 3 hours. Kevin in Lincolnshire says this: morning, Mike. Air source heat pumps are really only suitable for heating a hot tub or very small accommodation, i.e. a small bungalow or a very small house. They are not efficient enough or powerful enough to heat normal homes. They run at a lower temperature than a gas boiler, and you have to upgrade all of your radiators and pipes in the house if you want to install a heat pump instead of using a gas boiler. A good gas boiler is still far more efficient and the best way to heat your house. Well, this is it. There's no question that a gas boiler is the way to go. The idea that somehow Ed Miliband now wants to encourage people to take money off their salaries every single month to put into some kind of heat pump fund is nonsense and indeed madness. It's crazy. Who wants to do that? Absolutely and utterly ridiculous. We've got plenty of calls coming in on the heat pump front as well, so we'll talk some more about that. Because basically we've also been told this morning by the CEO of Centrica that net zero is not ever going to reduce your electricity bill. So the heat pump point is that it doesn't work as well as a gas boiler. It's supposedly more net zero friendly, but it's not going to bring your bill down. In fact, if anything, your bill's going to go up. What is the point of it all? Let's talk to Matthew Topham, who's the lead water campaigner at We Own It. It's a not-for-profit organisation that makes the case against privatisation and for public ownership. Because, of course, we saw yesterday Thames CEO Chris Weston was in front of a committee in which basically he was being asked about his bonus, £195,000 bonus, and whether he deserved it. And he was also asked an awful lot about whether actually he was doing a very good job, because Thames Water seems to be falling off a cliff. They don't seem to know how to run the company well. The share price has fallen off a cliff, and also they're not really very good at actually supplying water. So what are they good for? Should we have a quick look at what the CEO actually said when he was stopped outside the inquiry by Sky News?
Please, I have said everything to the committee for the last 2 hours.
You're in a public-facing role, and customers deserve an explanation because they've been treated very badly. They're facing huge bills. You've got plenty of money. Give them an explanation.
What do you want an explanation of?
How the company got to this point, how you're going to save it, how can you change culture when you're still taking big bonuses?
There are a lot of questions in there. I have answered all of those questions for the committee. I am absolutely sure that we will save the company, and we will sort it out, and we'll improve its operations, and we will restructure its balance sheet so there is less debt. And performance will improve over time, but this is going to take 5 to 10 years. And I'm sorry it's taking so long, but that is the reality of the situation.
Do you want to say sorry?
I said I'm sorry that the service that the customers receive, it's not where we would like it to be. Everyone is very committed in Thames to trying and sort it out. So absolutely, I'm sorry of the service some people receive, but it will absolutely get fixed.
Yeah, will it? OK, great. We'll just give you another 5 or 10 years then, shall we? Matthew's here, Topham. Matthew, very good to see you.
Good morning.
I can't remember the last time Thames Water did anything right, can you?
No, and watching that interview, watching the discussions in the committee yesterday, it's like watching a slow car crash. And it would be funny if it wasn't the largest utility in this country that 16 million people rely on and have no choice but to rely on for their water. This isn't something we can opt into. This is something that's essential and that we have to pay for.
Yes, exactly right. And I always make the point that, you know, water should not be this difficult to run as a business, should it? I mean, it falls from the sky, it's free, you've got to collect it, you've got to funnel it into a pipe, send it to people's houses, and then somehow take some of the wastewater away. I mean, I don't understand what's so complicated about it. They managed to lose, I don't know what the figure is now, but it's sort of hundreds of billions of litres of water a day that just leak into the ground.
It's absolutely absurd, and it doesn't have to be this way. Take Paris Water, our neighbouring capital city.
Yeah.
They remunicipalised. They took that company back into public ownership in 2010, and they slashed from a 20% leak rate to a 5% leak rate in a space of about 5 years.
Yeah.
We never see that sort of decrease under the privatised system in the UK.
No.
We've got examples of it nearby. Why aren't we doing what 90% of the world do and running water in public ownership, where it seems to work better?
I mean, they seem to have a much better model even in Scotland, don't they? I mean, I seem to remember from when I lived up there, the Scottish water company was, I think, publicly owned, but they basically charge the amount of money that you pay onto your council tax bill, and it just seems to run a lot smoother.
Absolutely. So from this year, your Scottish water bill is going to be about £110 cheaper on average than your English water bill, and that's because it's in public ownership.
Right.
And actually, they're investing about 35% more historically in the water system.
Yeah.
So you pay less, you get more. It seems like an obvious solution, and yet the Environment Minister, Steve Reed, has banned his independent commission into the English and Welsh water sector from looking at public ownership. He says, no, we don't want to hear about that solution. And the question is, why isn't he looking at what 90% of the world do, and what leading academics say is the best way to run a water system?
Yeah. Also, I mean, you can understand it if he was somehow ideologically opposed to nationalisation. It might be a bit bizarre, given that he's supposed to be a Labour minister. But nevertheless, if it was being run well, you could go, yeah, all right, let's just leave it alone. But it's not being run well. I mean, I remember, you probably don't remember this, you're probably not old enough, but I remember back in 2010-11, Thames Water were digging up all the streets in London because they said they had to repair all of the sort of Dickensian Victorian pipe systems in time for the Olympics in 2012. They're still doing it. You know, my street was dug up just the other week and closed off completely for 2 weeks, and we were told, oh, it's Thames Water fixing some storm drains or something. And I'm going, you know, I understand that it's difficult. I understand that, you know, lots of pipes are old, but how long do they need to fix it?
Yeah, you think 35 years of privatisation, they wouldn't be turning around to us again, as we've just seen Chris Weston saying there, give us another bit of time, give us another 5 years. Yeah. Surely they've had the time that they need. And this is why we need the minister to step up. And he's not taking action. And so I've been working with someone called Lois, who's in his constituency in South London. And Lois wants to do what the water companies have done and take him to the football. So the owners of Northumbrian Water gave him £1,800 of hospitality to go to the football.
Yeah.
Lois, his constituent, says she wants to do the same. Come see Crystal Palace with Lois, Steve Reed, and she'll tell you why 82% of us want it back in public ownership. Yeah. You've heard the case from the private water companies. Yeah. Why won't you hear it from your constituents?
Well, I mean, given Keir Starmer's ability to flip-flop around, I mean, he's desperate to do anything to make him popular. So you can convince him to this will make you popular. Maybe he'll buy it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it is something that unites nearly all of the country from right to left. We all know that water is failing in private hands, and we know that it works better abroad in Scotland where it's in public ownership. Yeah. So this is something that will unite the country. We know it needs sorting. It affects all of our bills. Let's get on and sort it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'm with you. I think it should be done. Matthew Topham there, lead water campaigner at We Own It. Thank you very much indeed. Good to speak to you. Morning, Mike. That wasn't Sarah you called at 8:33. It was a call from Keir Starmer. All the best, Steve from St Leonard's on Sea. Lovely part of the world. Nice place to be today. Sarah in Northamptonshire. Let's have another go. How are you?
I'm fine. Right.
That's better. There you go. Go on.
Right. I had one when I moved into an eco house 4 years ago.
Right.
First winter it failed and I had no heating or hot water for 3 months. I got compensation. It failed the second year, so I got in touch with the CEO of the housing and they installed me a brand new Valiant. I think that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, they must have thought I was a Karen because after it got installed, I rang up and said, what's going on? It's the summer. My pipes are hot.
Right.
So they sent out a Valiant engineer and he said, oh, yes. He said, what happens is when you put the hot water on, they throw the hot water back into the system.
Right.
And I said, well, can you fix it? He said, no, that's what they do. So
what's the point of that then?
What is the actual point? They cost me £3 every morning just to put the heater and hot water on, and now I live in an old-fashioned gas boiler house, and it costs me £1 a day.
Yes.
So
no, I don't mean what was your point, Sarah. I mean, what's the point of the heat pump system putting the hot water back into the system?
Well, it just does. You ask Valen. If you speak to them, I got a letter to say that is not a fault. They dump, that was the word, they dump the water back into the system. I said, well, it's 40 degrees upstairs. But they're not economical. They install huge, great big boilers with them. And you know when you've boiled a kettle and it's lukewarm? That's about as much heat you get, Mike.
Yeah, that's what I hear. That's what I hear. And how expensive was it to run as well?
Absolutely a fortune. I used to have hot water bottles for last winter. And no, they cost an absolute fortune. I couldn't afford to put it on, but now I can have it on when I like on the gas one. But no, they're absolutely awful. They're not eco-friendly, and if you get a power cut because they're electric, well, good luck with that.
No chance. Exactly right. Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody I hear that I speak to about heat pumps basically says the same thing. They're not very efficient. They're very noisy. They're not very hot. I mean, as far as the two words heat and pump, they don't seem to do either.
No, they don't. They moved it from the top because usually they install them up high, so they put it to the bottom, a new one, and it kicks out condensation, so my patio doors would have icicles on them.
Yeah.
So I'd be even colder.
Yeah.
So, but
Blimey.
anyway, I'll let you go. You're a busy man. But I'd just like to say we're already an island of strangers. He needs to catch up.
Yes.
Good morning.
Well done, Sarah. Brilliant. Fantastic. What a woman. She came on first as a Dalek, as Keir Starmer. Now she's doing Keir Starmer impersonations. Tremendous. That's for old time's sake, since we're talking about heat pumps and net zero and boilers and all that sort of thing. How about GB Energy's Jürgen? Jürgen Meyer, of course, is his name. The man who really doesn't have much to do because the company doesn't do anything. Maybe we'll have a look at the Situations Vacant page on their website, which they've now got a website, by the way. But last time we looked, they didn't have any Situations Vacant, so we'll check that out. But here he is, being asked about lower energy bills.
It will help bring energy prices down.
When?
Well, it's a matter for government and policy to decide.
But as the boss of this and as someone who is driving forward the ambition of the government, you surely have an idea in your head of when that central pledge to the people of reducing their bills by £300 will come into action.
It is not in the remit of Great British Energy to work out exactly how that energy costing gets through to the consumer.
Yeah, what exactly is the remit of Great British Energy? Nobody seems to know. This from Matt in the East Midlands. On the subject of heat pumps, a colleague of mine installed a ground source heat pump at his property, which was subsidised by the government for its first couple of years. These have now stopped, and now to run his property, it's costing him a 5-figure number in electricity, to the point where he now thinks he's going to have to sell because it's unsustainable. 5 figures? What, so 20 grand? 10 grand? How much? No, that's 6 figures, isn't it? No, that's 5 figures. So 10 grand and up to pay for electricity. That's bonkers. One from Steve is, it's not just the cost of the heat pump, it's the trashing of your house to fit the new pipework, ripping up floors and ruining walls, redecorating, etc. A realistic total cost can be upwards of 20,000 quid, plus all the hassle. Crikey, that's extraordinary. And why would anybody want to do it? You know, Ed Miliband's now saying what he wants to do is have you take something off your salary every month to put it in a special fund so that you can buy a heat pump, so you can afford to heat your house for 20,000 a year or 10,000 a year. Well, it's an absolute joke, isn't it? Ridiculous. This is Talk.
We know that over the past 3 years he's been on countless foreign jet-setting luxury trips around the world at our expense. He says it's to, foster relations with foreign countries and to tell them how wrong Russia was to invade Ukraine. I'm not sure what that has got to do with the Speaker, but there you are. He spent about £300,000 over the last 3 years going on these luxury trips.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:49. I'm Mike Graham. How about this from Debbie? This is interesting. My car was set on fire in my drive in January. Police came round that night and then phoned once to say they can't find anything out, but to let them know if I hear anything. So on my experience, we won't hear much about the Priam's arsonist. This is great, isn't it? Police come round. Let us know if you hear anything. The entire car's been set on fire. Let's get a voice note from Lisa on heat pumps.
My partner's got a ground source heat pump, so it's not an air source one like the other lady was discussing. They have to dig all the ground out and put it in. It cost him £27,000 because they're much more complex. That doesn't work either. He's still using his oil lager after all that, and he won't replace the radiators because they've said they have to be 2/3 the size of what you've got, bigger. So, yeah, they're not worth the money, and he's using oil.
It's like it's been invented by a lunatic, isn't it, this heat pump business? One here from Evelyn, who says, I'm in a council house. The council are putting heat pumps and solar panels in all our homes. I'm disabled and get really cold. I told them the temperature is currently really, really low. I've got radiators, and they said the heat pump wouldn't be adequate for my needs. So then they didn't do it. I mean, it's literally like the lunatics have taken over the asylum and they're running it as a country, with an asylum sort of attached. I don't know. Let's talk to Mike Neville, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector, because we've got a couple of things to talk about regarding the new vetting regulations which have come into force, which basically say, I think, that police officers who fail background checks will be automatically sacked, as opposed to what used to happen to them. Mike, very good morning to you, sir. I thought good morning, Mike. I thought we might start, though, with the question about the arson attack on Keir Starmer's house. I know you've been listening to the show, but I've been asking the question why it is that we don't know much about the suspect at this particular moment in time. You know, given what happened in previous cases, like in Southport, in other situations where, you know, Christopher Hall, the KC who was investigating all of it, said, you know, the police should have been more forthcoming with information. We're not being told about the nationality of this 21-year-old suspect who's been arrested down in Sydenham in south-east London. But it's the terror police who are investigating, right, the counter-terror branch of Scotland Yard. There's a possibility now that a hostile state may be linked to this, and obviously if that is the case, it's a far more serious problem than we at first thought. And what I was saying to Esther McVeigh, the MP, was, you know, MPs have been told to look out for anything suspicious. Well, surely if this is going to be ending up something which is connected to Iran or connected to some kind of, you know, asylum seeker group or a jihadi group or something coming back from ISIS, we need to know, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely, and the police seemingly never learn these things, and the government don't learn these things. When I was in the Met, the press agency was called the DPA, whatever that, but we used to say it meant don't publish anything. They were hopeless.
Yeah.
And all they do, though, by carrying on like this, is just fuel rumours, and all sorts of false narratives can spread like wildfire on social media. So it'd be far better if they fill the void with some information rather than withholding it like this. Because as you said, one, it causes speculation. And secondly, as you've indicated, if you're looking out for suspicious things, we all know what different kinds of people look like. And it'd be far easier if you're just focusing on looking for one particular group who may be dangerous. So they put it, not only are they fueling speculation, but they're possibly putting people at risk.
Right. Because, I mean, it was very fortunate that these events that we're just watching here, the fire in the car, which could have set off a load of other fires in other cars, the fire in the sort of the well of the door of the house in Kentish Town. You know, again, thank goodness that the people inside were okay, and thank goodness that the fire didn't spread to any of the nearby housing, because I think it's a sort of terraced house situation. You know, if there are people who are capable of doing what appears to have been a fairly well-planned attack, you know, we obviously should be informed.
All the time. I mean, I see things in the paper where it says, oh, we're looking for a suspect for rape or whatever, rape or murder. And then there's no description. Well, how can anybody hope to tell the police what's going on if there's no description or clues? And for what we always know, we forever know that the moment that there's no description given, the sad fact is, you know, it's not a white person who's done it, because if it was a white person who'd done it, there would be a full description. Yeah. And as I say, it just causes absolute trouble by doing this, and they continue to do it, and it achieves nothing. In fact, it makes things worse.
Yeah, exactly right. And they can't keep hiding behind this business of, you know, we don't want to prejudice an investigation. You can't prejudice an investigation. I know that, you know that, they know that. So why do they keep saying it?
Well, they keep saying it because they've got to find an excuse, like Keir Starmer did with Southport.
Yeah.
This was some kind of excuse. So you had the ridiculous situation where he was condemning people who were involved in disorder as far-right thugs,
Yeah.
and then we were having published photographs of a Cardiff choir boy and being told all sorts of misinformation about that. And this has been published recently, hasn't it? It said that that the Southport riots was nothing to do with some organised far-right thuggery.
They got it wrong.
But it just shows they can't. They do one thing for one side and they do one thing for other. And again, all it does is say to people, we have two-tier justice, we have two-tier policing.
Yeah, exactly right. Because there can't really be a justifiable reason why they can't name. You don't necessarily give the guy's name, but they should at least tell us where he's from.
Tell us where he's from, and then people might have some information. They might have known some flights. They might have seen somebody arrive. They might have some information that they've seen of some people they know from that area, and they could really help the counter-terrorism officers to crack this case and find anybody else involved.
Yeah.
But whilst the public are kept in the dark, they can't supply that vital information, which often leads to a good result for the police.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about this background check story as well. Police officers who fail these background checks will be automatically sacked from next month to close what they're calling a glaring gap in the law. I mean, some people might say, well, I'm surprised this wasn't the case in the first place.
Well, we look at it, and I know the officer concerned. He brought this about, really. That what the police have said now is what they used to do is they vetted you before you joined, so they could say, right, you failed vetting, you can't join the police. What the problem was is once you're in the police, if you fail vetting, then they couldn't get rid of you.
Right.
Or what was held is that you were entitled to a fair trial. And what can happen is that you can be subject to numerous allegations of serious things, and then none of them are proved, but they can still dismiss you. Now, obviously, we want rid of bad police officers.
Yeah.
You know, Sir Robert Mark said a good police force is one that catches more crooks than it employs.
Yeah.
But what you have a situation, if let's say, for example, there are wicked officers who get several allegations made against them and they're not proven for whatever reason.
Right.
But let's say you're a very good detective and you're targeting an organised crime group, and that organised crime group puts in all sorts of, pays people to make allegations about you over a period of time, paints a picture that you're a really bad officer without any allegations being proved. There has to be checks and balances to make sure that those allegations, that they're fully investigated and this pattern of events, because we don't want to see in a fair and just society, it's doing something when you're throwing people out when they haven't actually been convicted or found guilty of anything. So we have to be very, very sure that we're doing the right thing.
Sure. It sounds to me, though, like common sense would prevail and would be the answer to this, wouldn't it? So you don't have a blanket rule for everybody, so that you either get thrown out or you stay. You treat each case on its merits.
Mike, when have you ever known the public sector act with common sense? No, we may discuss that on here, but I think common sense is safe for talkTV. It's not safe for the public sector.
I know.
And the other factor as well, the other factor I always think as well is how many of the MPs who voted this in would be booted out if they were subjected to the same vetting procedures. That's also worries me as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you, Mike Neville. Thank you very much indeed, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. One from Reg who says this: Miliband wants to take money off your salary every month to pay for your heat pump. It will probably work out cheaper to become unemployed. The amount of stuff they take off us now, I already swear 90% of my salary goes to the tax man. It does feel like that, doesn't it? What another great show with so much common sense, says Wendy in Clackmannanshire, another great part of the country. No net zero for us. We got a new gas central heating boiler installed on Monday. It's brilliant. Absolutely right. Nobody wants to get rid of their gas boiler. They're the most fantastic way of heating your water in your house. Let's get a voice note from Perry.
Morning, Mike. Might be a little bit off topic this morning, but regarding reform and net zero, obviously, I've listened to all their conferences and they talk about scrapping net zero, but I never hear them talk about pushing back on this electric van and car nonsense. I mean, if they get into power, I'd really like to know, will I still be able to buy diesel vans? Because electric vans would be absolutely useless to be in my business.
Yeah.
I think they need to start telling me and reassuring me that I will still be able to buy a diesel van if they get into power.
That's a very good question, Perry, and I'll make sure I ask it to anybody from Reform that I get on, because I'd like to know what their policy would be as well. Thanks, Mike, says this message that doesn't have a name. Ray read Ed's suggestion that we can have the cost of a heat pump deducted from our salary. I have a 2-word reply for him, and one of them is off. Yeah, well, absolutely right. We've got lots more to do. Coming up in the next hour, we'll take more of your calls, get more of your voice notes on board as well. David Wooding joins us, former Sun political editor and former Daily Express editor, of course, as well. He'll run his line over what's going on, and much else besides. This is Morning Glory. We'll see you after the news.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, now, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 9. And it's a beautiful morning. It's been a beautiful week. It's another sort of 23, 24 degree day coming up. So you want to get out there. Happily, it's warm because you won't want to put your heat pump on if you've got a heat pump, obviously, because they don't work very well. And you'll be spending an absolute fortune trying to heat your own house. Coming up in this hour, David Wooding joins us, former Sun political editor, former editor of the Sunday Express, I should say, now Sun leader writer as well. Welcome back. I haven't seen you for such a long time. Yeah. Good to see you. We've got loads to talk about, including, of course, the big story on the front page of the Telegraph, that a rogue state or some kind of hostile state may now be linked to the firebomb attack on Keir Starmer's house in North London, and his car and the other property which he hadn't lived in for many, many years, but where he used to live with a former partner. I'm asking the question, why is it that the police have still not learned a lesson to Southport, despite despite what they were told, that they need to give out more information in order for people not to have all sorts of, fantastical theories about what could have happened. But what if it turns out to be an asylum seeker? What if it turns out to be somebody who's got some link to Iran? What if it turns out to be somebody who's in this country illegally? We know that those Iranian terrorists who were arrested just a couple of weeks ago were asylum seekers, at least some of them were, and living in taxpayer-funded housing. So, if this is a terror attack on a Prime Minister which has been somehow inspired or funded in some way by a rogue state or an enemy of this country, then we need to know. And people are being told to look out for anything suspicious. Well, what do you have to look out for? Nobody even knows. We talked to Esther McVeigh earlier. She's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to look out for. I'm an MP. Am I in some kind of danger? I don't know. We'll get to the bottom of that. We'll also talk about Keir Starmer and his problems, of course, with his own party. He's been accused of being Enoch Starmer now by some people because he seems to have gone to the right of Attila the Hun in a desperate effort to garner some votes from Reform. Which all went south back in the Runcorn by-election and in the local elections a couple of weeks ago. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Ben.
Morning, Mike. Ben from Frimley here. I'm really trying to rack my brains as to one thing that Keir Starmer's done to lift our spirits. One thing that he's done that's been positive for our nation. Can you just give me one thing? I mean, the list is endless of stuff that he's done that has just, really, really crushed us and made us all lose our motivation to live. Oh, please help me, Mike. Just one thing Keir Starmer's done that's positive, please.
Well, as you say it, Ben, I can hear you chuckling, and I think that's about the only thing I can tell you. He's made us all laugh. He's given us a great laugh. I'm going to fix the foundations. He has given us a theme park, though. How about that? Up in Luton somewhere. That's going to be built just in time for about another 1 million migrants to come to ride on all the rides for free. It'll be brilliant. It's 5 minutes past 9. We'll be back after this. Deary me. I mean, I tell you what, David Wooding, an old colleague, I don't even want to say how many years ago I first met you. I think I first met you in New York when I was there in the 80s.
It was the 80s.
And you were working for The Sun, I think, weren't you?
Yeah.
Crikey. I mean, it's frightening, that, isn't it? Yeah. But can you think of anything that Starmer's done that's been uplifting for the nation? I mean, people struggle. He has given us a few laughs. But it is dire, isn't it?
Has he done anything positive?
I don't think he has.
Because he's come in and given us all grim news.
Yeah.
We're in a mess. He's talked the country down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of promises.
Well, the thing is, you will know this better than anyone. You've been in the game a long time. He came to this sort of job with people like me thinking it's going to be a rough few years. He's going to do things that we're not going to like. He's going to probably introduce policies that I certainly wouldn't have voted for. However, what I didn't know was he was going to be completely incompetent and appoint a load of incompetent people around him to run the cabinet, and that's the truth of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you got him by default, really, is the truth.
Yeah, well, he didn't win the election until he's lost it.
Until he's lost it,
yeah. And so, I mean, let's kick off with the state of where he is now, because after that speech on, was it Monday? I suppose it was Monday, the laying out of the big new immigration policy, which doesn't amount to very much, but has upset almost everybody on the left of the Labour Party.
Yeah, well, it's staggering. And, I don't think there's any MPs, there might be one or two, but most MPs on there are either being vocal or saying nothing.
Yeah.
And those who say nothing don't like it.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean,
And what's happening inside the cabinet? Are there people in the cabinet who are annoyed with the way he's done it as well?
Well, I'm not as tapped in as I was there.
Yeah.
But I mean, there will be one or two who have. You can.
I mean, Angela Rayner can't be happy about it.
She's not happy, and a lot of them are. I mean, I don't think Yvette Cooper's happy either. To be honest, I mean, she's very pro-migration.
Yeah. Well, she's been very. I mean, but so has he been. I mean, he's only ever been pro-migration. He's never been anti-migration. Yeah. We played the clip the other day that Reform ended up using on their sort of promotional material, where he said, we need to talk up the benefits of migration. We need to talk about how migration has built this country, how great it is. I mean, Sadiq Khan, who's been very critical of Starmer as well, was on another station yesterday talking about how actually, migrant families cost less money to this country than homegrown British families. You're kind of going, well, why are you saying that? It's not, well, first of all, it's not true. Yeah. But there is that sense in the Labour Party that basically, the worst people in the world are British. And, they want to promote everybody else who isn't British and bring them into the country. It's very bizarre, isn't it?
And the other thing, of course, is what's happened now with the government. They've accepted all these great myths about migration being good for growth and all that have all been. They've basically accepted that the Treasury
got that completely wrong. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we all know that £5 million a day alone is the cost of running the asylum hotels. That's now going to turn into asylum homes, which are not going to be hotels anymore. They're going to be private, residences. People are already telling us that they're getting eviction notices because their landlords want to move them out because they can get more money out of the migrants. Yeah. And it's a shocking state of affairs, isn't it?
It's bloody terrible. And I don't know how you claw it back from there because... I mean, he's removed all the deterrent. He talks about smashing the gangs. He's done nothing to smash the gangs.
No. Well, he didn't even mention the boats, did he, at all? He didn't mention the illegal migrants whatsoever. No. He talks about reducing the numbers of people coming, which have already been reduced by the Tories anyway, haven't they? Because
and a lot of the benefits he's going to he's going to claim are his success.
Yeah.
Down to the reforms that Rishi brought in.
Yeah, right. When you couldn't bring as many dependents. Yeah. And also, at the same time, he's done this deal with India, this trade deal, which is going to allow more Indian workers to come and work here, who will presumably bring members of their families with them and not pay any national insurance. And then who knows what will happen after the 3 years? They might decide they want to hang around, and they might decide they want to apply for asylum because they can. Then you've got his freedom of movement thing going on with the young people of Europe, where he's inviting all them to come in. So he's all for British workers, except for when he's not. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's just bizarre. But let's talk a bit about this story in the Telegraph about, the hostile state business, because this is another case in point of the police not being kind of, truthful with the public. And they don't seem to have learned their lesson from giving out information. They're refusing at the moment to name the nationality that this 21-year-old character is from. But all they'll say is that he had a grudge against the Prime Minister. I mean, it could be anything, couldn't it?
Could be. I mean, it could be. It could be. I thought originally it was some personal grudge.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was and they've raised that. The police have raised that. We didn't even think about it.
But I don't think you can be 21 years of age and have a personal grudge against the Prime Minister unless you personally know him.
Yeah.
Which seems unlikely, doesn't it? No. I mean, it's more likely that he's either an asylum seeker or he's some kind of agent of some kind or other from Iran, because Iran seems to be a real problem at the moment.
And they're subcontracting their stuff out, aren't they? They'll get someone, they'll pay him some money.
Right.
I mean, but the fact that where he lived and where the attacks took place, the fact that it was a car that he owned ages ago and a flat he used to live in. I mean, you can't just go and... It's not like, oh, let's go and bomb number 10, which is what some 21-year-old would think. It's, somebody's done some research.
Yes, right. I mean, because I wasn't aware that there was a property that he had lived in as a rental. I presume a rental
I'd have to do some work to find out all that.
And the fact that we now know that the car that was blown up was actually sold it to his neighbour, and that the house is now being rented out to his sister-in-law. We didn't know any of that because we hadn't bothered to check it. But this person... He could be, if a charge is brought, could be presumably charged with attempted murder.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's that serious. So they must know something. But the problem is that, again, unless they tell us, there will be inevitably speculation about who he is.
That's what they're up against.
Yeah. It isn't good. A couple of other stories going on. On the front page of the Telegraph as well, burglars to serve a third of their sentence. Now, this is another kind of thorn in the side, isn't it, of Starmer? Because every time he releases people from prison, something goes wrong.
Well, yeah, you have the situation where they let people out of prison after they've only done 40% of their sentence. Now they're going to be double-ended. So on the one hand, if you go in, you don't automatically you get out earlier if you behave yourself and do. What do they call it? Rehabilitation.
Yes.
You learn skills.
Right.
You practice.
You get sort of points or something.
Yeah.
Don't you?
And if you misbehave in prison, then the sentence is longer, so they can extend it. And it's going to be a third. So you'll do a third in prison, then you do a third tagged, you'll get out, and then you do a third when you're released on licence. And if you do anything wrong in that third, you get hauled back into prison. So I think. It's imaginative.
Yeah.
It's another way of saying to prisoners, if you behave yourself and try and get yourself back on the straight and narrow, well, we'll let you out early.
Because we've seen lately that the behaviour inside of prisons is really a problem, isn't it? Because prisons, I'm told, are in crisis. We had the case of Rudy Cabana, you know, the Southport killer throwing a pot of boiling water over a prison guard. We had the other guy, Beatty, the Manchester bomber, slashing the throat of somebody in prison and throwing boiling oil over them. You know, all of these problems are being found to be the case because the prisons are simply overcrowded, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think the problem before, Mike, was that they were letting people out early for no reason at all, just as an excuse to get the prisons emptied.
Right.
This seems to be, it's David Gauke, isn't it, the former Justice Secretary in the Tory government.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of thought gone into this. So
the problem is the
sort of think it's possibly.
The public will see it as they're just letting more people out.
Well, yeah.
And they're saying, of course, these are only going to be offenders jailed for relatively small-time offences like burglary and shoplifting. But as somebody pointed out to me today in a message, there's not that many people getting arrested for burglary because most burglaries are never solved. Most burglaries the police don't even show up for. So if you're getting in prison for burglary, you must be a pretty bad, offender.
You go to prison for being for tweeting unpleasant things.
They're not letting. Well, she's up for
thinking bad things.
Yeah, she's up for an appeal hearing, I think, on Thursday.
Yeah.
So we'll see whether Lisa Connolly gets let out.
Like you say, it's shorter prison sentences, but there is the other side of it is that they can be longer if people don't behave themselves behind bars.
Yeah.
So it gives them the chance to extend it. Whether or not the regime will adhere to that and they'll just end up getting out sooner remains to be seen. But I think it's a thoughtful new way of looking at sentences.
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people that thinks they just build more prisons, you know, because if you've got that
prison
many...
works, as Michael Howard, the former Home Secretary, once said.
Yes, exactly. It does work. Yeah. I mean, but at the moment, apparently, the prisons are also overrun by an awful lot of gangs who control an awful lot of what goes on inside the prison, and people just apparently leave them to do it. And a lot of them are Muslim gangs. Apparently, we're told that people are being forced into sort of converting to Islam while they're in prison just to keep themselves safe, which is a bizarre situation, which they're going to have to fix.
We had those two cases recently of one throwing hot oil over a prison officer, and then barely a week later, the hot water.
Yeah.
So really, they do need to tighten up on that massively.
They do, absolutely. One final thing, net zero, which of course is another bane of Keir Starmer's life, because eventually if he's going to let go of all of the things that he went into power to get done, like if he's going to reverse immigration, eventually he's going to have to let go of net zero because it's going to kill the economy. We've got now today in the Telegraph, Chris O'Shea, Chief Executive of Centrica, British Gas's parent company, saying on LinkedIn basically the net zero will never materially reduce UK's electricity prices. Electricity prices will not come down as a result of net zero. So I mean that's the final nail in the coffin, isn't it?
Well, Ed Miliband was telling us for months, years even, that net zero would bring down, well, Labour, in fact, when they came to power, would bring down the price of energy bills. We've yet to see that.
300 quid.
Yeah, well, it isn't happening, and it isn't going to happen. I mean, I think all that's going to happen with net zero, it might secure our energy supplies because we won't be relying on foreign gas.
Yeah, but we could do that already with the gas fields that we've got and the oil that we've got.
But it's certainly not going to reduce, and I don't think anyone will be surprised by that.
No, and we've been getting a lot of communications today about heat pumps in terms of the fact that, you know, a lot of public housing is getting heat pumps and solar panels installed without anybody asking for them. So that's more public money going down the drain. We've got Ed Miliband today in The Sun, a suggestion that he might be suggesting that you can put some of your salary away every month to save for a heat pump, which costs somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 quid.
Well, I can tell you, Mike, I recently had a new boiler fitted.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, well, what about a heat pump? Because, I mean, I'd read about it all. Is it worth getting a heat pump?
Yeah.
And the two of the people I had round to price me up for it said, don't bother with a heat pump. It'll cost you so much money.
Yeah.
You won't make the save. You'll be dead before you start making any savings.
Well, this is it. Yeah. They talk about if you put in a ground source heat pump, you have to dig up a load of bits of the garden if you've got space to do that. And if you don't have a space for that, you have to dig around inside the house, and you have to install things, and they're noisy, and you have to put new pipes in, new radiators. I mean, it costs a lot of money.
I know about this because my next door neighbour's having one fitted. He didn't listen to the advice of the man from the British Gas, and vans galore outside, digging, all sorts of noise going on. So goodness knows what it takes to have one fitted.
I know. I don't understand why people are so sure that they should do this. I mean, because they've been sort of shamed into it, haven't they, by the Green Brigade?
I think, fair enough, if new homes are being built and they contain a heat pump, then all the work's done integral to building the house.
If it's a new house.
But if you've got an old house that's, got a bit of character, or you're living in a semi somewhere, you're not going to pay for this to be fitted.
No, of course not, unless you've got more money than sense.
Yeah. But of course, Ed Miliband is a zealot on this, and it is a whole raison d'etre.
What do you reckon, though, on his sort of political future? Because a lot of people don't think he's going to survive the rest of the year, and he may be out, if not by Christmas.
Well,
before that.
I've noticed he's been sitting, not been sitting in next to the Prime Minister PMQs for a couple of the last sessions. I don't know whether that means anything or whether reading too much into it. But yeah, lots of people feel he is a bit of a problem for Keir Starmer, and of course he was leader of the party himself.
Well, he was,
and he didn't do very well.
And people say to me, it's him and Angela Rayner who are the kind of the lefty kind of heart of the party in Parliament, at least.
Yeah.
And if that's true, then he must be against the immigration policy of Starmer as well. Then
possibly. I mean, the biggest. He talks about busting the gangs. The biggest gang he's got to bust is sitting on his own green benches.
Yeah.
I mean, they are all against this immigration crackdown.
Yeah.
And those who are not speaking, you can bet your bottom dollar that they're against it. But lots of people are speaking out about it. You've seen the reaction this morning, likening him to Enoch Powell and so forth.
I know. Yeah, absolutely right. David, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We've got lots more to do. We're going to talk about that extraordinary story of the guy who's been let out of prison 38 years after serving a sentence, which apparently he should never have served because he's not guilty of the murder. He was known as the Beast of Birkenhead. I mean, incredible. He's now not the Beast of Birkenhead. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Morning, Mike. Hi, this is Andrew from Weymouth. Great show as ever. You're discussing about the heat pumps and Ed Miliband's plans. I guess they would work fine if you committed in every new build that the people building those new builds would have them placed in there. That's fine. That's a different story. But the problem with England is the housing stock and the existing housing stock. I'll give you an example. Here in Weymouth, all old Georgian buildings on the seafront, we run a guest house, right? It was built in 1770 odd. We're not even allowed to have any double glazing in all our 4 floors. We're not even allowed to touch anything. Now, where and how on earth would a heat pump fit into this building? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't even make any sense at all.
No, it makes no sense at all. And indeed, it doesn't make any sense for anything at all, apart from, as David said, if you put them in new buildings and new houses come complete with them, and that's all part of the purchase price. But nobody in their right mind, surely, is going to put one in, are they? 21 minutes past 9. This is Morning Glory.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, as a Member of Parliament, you are gifted loads of things. You are genuinely told that there are certain things that you're able to keep, and you don't have to declare it if it's worth less than £300. I think about £300. So what's interesting is that it does really reveal the absolute lavish nature of a lot of what these members of Parliament get. And I think what we have to be very clear about is any member of Parliament that claims that they are hard done by, that the £80,000 or £90,000 now that members of Parliament get as a salary, that's not all the benefits that they receive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:23. He's been at it again. Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I? I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source. Yeah, of course you will, Keir. I mean, for heaven's sake, when is he going to do anything which is actually what he said he would do? That's the problem. Quentin Huntley's here, criminal defence barrister. Some of the stuff that Keir Starmer's coming up with is quite criminal, and that's another story. Quentin, an extraordinary tale to ask you about this morning, and that is, of course, the story of Peter Sullivan, 68-year-old man who served the last 38 years in jail for a murder he did not commit. I mean, this is sort of fairy tale stuff, isn't it? And fairy tale in reverse, I suppose.
Well, it's more of a nightmare, to be honest, but both for him and for the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and I mean, how is it possible that this could have happened? I mean, they say that he was denied an appeal back in 2019, I think, but somehow new DNA evidence was discovered, and once they saw that, it was very clear that he could not have perpetrated the murder. Because the other problem, of course, for whoever did kill Diane Sindel in 1986, that person would appear to be still at large.
Well, exactly. But the problem is that when he first went to the CCRC in 2008, the DNA technique that was used in front of the Court of Appeal this time, which is called YSTR, actually didn't exist.
Right.
So the CCRC looked at the existing DNA techniques at the time, and they were told by scientists that there wasn't anything that they could do to examine the conviction at that time.
Right.
As the science evolved, then this new technique was developed, and they were able to go back to the Court of Appeal on this occasion.
Right. And so, I mean, has it been the sort of dogged work of some lawyers here that has managed to unfold this particular piece of evidence? Because, I mean, clearly, if the new DNA evidence hadn't been discovered, he'd probably have died in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from where I'm sitting, the legal team have been exhaustive in their attempts. They've repeatedly gone to the Court of Appeal, they've been to the CCRC, they've chased down the new DNA techniques, so that they certainly can't be faulted as far as this is concerned, in my view.
OK. Let's have a look at Lord Justice Holroyd overturning the particular murder conviction.
The evidence given at trial on the issues of the bite mark evidence and the reliability of confessions now has to be considered in the context of the DNA evidence as to the involvement of an unknown man. However, we receive as fresh evidence the statements of Miss Alexander and Mr. MacDonald. In the light of that fresh evidence, we allow the appeal on ground one. We quash the conviction. As we have noted, the respondent very properly does not seek a retrial. The appellant must therefore be released from custody.
I mean, it all doesn't look as dramatic as it must have been, but the thing I find extraordinary, really, is that Peter Sullivan doesn't appear to be angry or bitter. He's just sort of sad.
Yes. I mean, one can only imagine what he's been through in the past 3 decades in respect of this. But the position is, it's interesting to listen to the judge there speaking about the bite mark evidence and the unreliability of the confession, because in fact that's something that he had gone to the Court of Appeal in 2019 and be rejected on those two grounds. But it appears that the addition of the DNA evidence led to the Crown Prosecution Service effectively not contesting the appeal, which is then an open door at the Court of Appeal for his conviction to be overturned.
Right. And the question now, I suppose, is about the compensation that he's likely to receive. The last time something like this happened, I think it was Andrew Malkinson, wasn't it, who spent 17 years in jail for a rape he did not commit. He was given around about £1 million compensation, but he said it was not enough, really, to compensate for 17 years of injustice. And I suppose you might say Peter Sullivan will say the same thing. I
imagine he would. The problem that's faced is that the compensation limit has been capped by Parliament at £1 million. Right. That's all he can get unless the law changes.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose in the face of it, if you get £1 million and it's tax-free, it's probably money worth having, but it isn't. I mean, it's almost impossible to compensate somebody for 38 years. I mean, I was making the joke earlier that, you know, he's going to find life very different from 1986 when he went into prison, not least because of the way the music business has changed, the way that, you know, culture has changed, the way that everything's changed, really. But somebody said, well, he was probably got an Xbox in there, probably had a TV. You know, prisons, it's not like the Shawshank Redemption where you sit in a hole and you don't see anything on the outside world. I mean, is that a fair representation? Would he come out of prison as if he was sort of stuck in time in 1986?
Well, it'll undoubtedly be difficult for him. I've come across cases in my career dealing with people who have been released after long stretches in custody, and it's the small details of life that they find hard, not necessarily the big things relating to streaming services, etc., but just subtle changes. It takes a lot of getting used to, and I don't think one can underestimate the effect that it would have on somebody. You can have TV and Xboxes and things like that, but I don't think anything can truly prepare you for the effect of coming into a world that you last left 38 years ago.
Yeah, sure. And I suppose as well, I mean, you get institutionalised to an extent. If you're inside of an institution like a prison for that length of time, you get used to not being a free man.
Yeah, absolutely. And having your effectively a timetable for every day dictated to you to then get up every morning and effectively have a free rein as to how you spend your day. I know from previous clients of mine that's something that is a mental challenge for them to get over.
Yeah. And is this one of those sort of one-offs because of, as you say, the DNA techniques weren't actually available, you know, 38 years ago or even more recently than that, in order to overturn this verdict, and it's just something that is happily something that does hopefully have a happy ending because of science and the advancements of science.
Yes, no, I'd agree with that. It is a great shame that this wasn't picked up earlier. There have been some question marks about a technique called PPY23 that was available back in 2015, and question marks over whether that could have enabled the case to be looked at sooner. But that, I'm afraid, is a scientific issue that's beyond my pay grade.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, it's all beyond all of our pay grades, I suppose, something like this. But listen, great to talk to you, Quentin Hunt. Thank you very much indeed. Criminal defence barrister there. On the extraordinary story, it's on many of the front pages this morning, a man by the name of Peter Sullivan, now 68 years old, in line for £1 million payment. I mean, people are saying it's not enough, it would never be enough, but, you know, imagine what it must be like now for the family of Diane Sindel, who was murdered 21 years of age in 1986. She was a florist. He was dubbed the Beast of Birkenhead. It was a very brutal killing, particularly brutal killing, but new DNA evidence has shown that he didn't do it. 38 years in jail. And, of course, he says he's not bitter or angry, and he's now going to begin repairing what I made from the driftwood that is my life. Amazing. Incredible. This from Frank, who says, morning, Mike. I recently applied to have an EV charger installed at my home. The supplier said I have a looped incoming main supply, meaning I share the main supply with my neighbours. This means I can't have one, as if I did when I went to charge my EV, it would interfere with my neighbour's electrical supply, i.e. it might turn all their lights off. Right, show. Well, that would make you popular, wouldn't it? Yeah, my neighbour keeps charging his bleeding electric car and putting all the lights off. Fantastic. Water companies will normally dig up the road and find they don't have a particular part to carry out a repair. This is why the groundworks stop and no work seems to be getting done, says Steve. Well, why haven't they? That's ridiculous. One here from Lee in East Yorkshire. Morning, Mike. You can't retrofit heat pumps since old houses just can't be insulated enough to make them efficient. They only work effectively on eco houses, and that's from the mouth of a salesperson I know well. Keep up the fantastic work, keeping us all sane and giving us all hope. Well, I'm very delighted to be able to do that. David has got something to say in Gloucestershire about Miliband. David, very good morning to you.
Well, morning, Michael.
Yes, good say. What can I do for you?
Well, I just thought he just says he's going to take a little bit off our salary to pay for the heat pump.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what, you mean like a loan? If you want the heat pump, you could just take a loan, couldn't you?
Well, I suppose so. But why would you want to have to pay that kind of money for a heat pump?
Well, yeah, but the point is, it's just like, what is it achieving? It's nothing.
Right.
I mean, I think something that looks really interesting is actually standing charges, because I was doing the maths on mine.
Yes.
But I've paid, this month alone, I've paid nearly 25% of my bill in standing charges alone.
And they keep going up, don't they?
Yeah, it's 92p a day it works out.
Yeah, that is mad. And they never really explain exactly what that covers. All we know is that it covers certain green sort of grants that are issued to various different companies. And it also covers, I believe, paying off electricity supply companies that have gone bust, and we have to rescue them.
Well, yeah, but I also understand it's used to subsidise all these wind turbines.
Yeah. No, it's that as well. It's green. Yeah, it's green. That's right. It's green subsidies, and it's bailing out companies that have gone bust.
It comes to about £330 a year, so it's a hell of a big number.
It is. It's a very big number.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. We should campaign to get it abolished. Very well said, David. Thank you. Super Grey says heat pumps work very well here in Finland. Most pumps are fitted on the outside of the house, but they will not heat up the whole house. Our house upstairs is 88 square metres, but they cost around 2,000 to 3,000 to buy. Euros. Then installation is about 600 to 1,000 euros, but then they are cheaper to run than electric radiators. But for houses in England, they won't heat up 2 floors. That's impossible. First floor, yes, but mainly only if it's open plan. Well, that's no use, is it? That's like saying, I've got a cooker, but it can only cook one thing at a time. You know, I've only got one hob, and I can't really make potatoes while I'm making, the fish, because the potatoes and the fish have to be cooked separately. I mean, it doesn't work. It's not a heater. If it doesn't work in every room in the house, it's not a heating source, is it? And if you say it works well, except it only works on one floor, well, then it doesn't work well. And if you say that it's relatively cheap in Finland, it may well be, but it isn't here. A bit like we had a guy the other day who rang up and said he'd installed solar panels on his house in Spain, and he'd installed solar panels on his house in Britain. And in Britain it cost him 10,000 to put them in, and in Spain it cost him 3,000, which again takes us back to the conversation we were having yesterday about how everything's more expensive here than it is everywhere else. We were going to take that up today, but we didn't, so maybe we'll do that tomorrow. Let's have a voice note from Patrick.
Hi, Mike. It's Patrick in East Yorkshire. There's a song, The Sound of Silence. Where the hell are Reeves and Rayner all coming out and supporting Starmer? They haven't been seen. Reeves wasn't even on the front bench for PMQs last week. I know it's a bit sad to watch it, but I'll be looking today to see whether or not Bernard rips him apart over this. But I don't think she will. I don't think she's got quite the savageness in her to do it.
It's a good point, Patrick. We haven't seen Rachel Reeves or Angela Rayner, but as we heard from David Wooding there, the leader writer from The Sun, it's very possible now that those who are saying nothing are saying nothing because they can't support Starmer. Because I haven't seen anybody from Labour coming out, basically. Even Yvette Cooper couldn't quite bring herself to support him, even though she kind of had to reluctantly go along with the fact that he said what he said and he wants to bring down immigration. But at the end of the day, there is, I don't think, any senior Labour cabinet minister who's come out in support of Keir Starmer. They just haven't. Sam says this, they're replacing all the gas mains up my road. I asked why they're doing this, as the government is saying we will have to have heat pumps in the future. He said they're designed to carry hydrogen. Looking into it, normal boilers can run with 80% gas and 20% hydrogen. So after we all get heat pumps, we'll be told that we need to go back to getting a boiler. Ring any bells? The diesel car? Well, this was Ed Miliband all over, wasn't it? Because he was the guy that told everybody when he was Environment Minister in Gordon Brown's government back in 2009-10, that the thing to do was to get a diesel car because they were cleaner, they were more efficient, the fuel was cheaper, and they were generally much better for the environment. That's what he said. And now he says he got that wrong, although he hasn't actually said he made a mistake. So you could be right. People have. I know that they're testing this. I think somewhere up in the northeast they were testing it, mixing hydrogen with natural gas, and it was working quite well. And people say hydrogen cars are the thing that are going to be the revolutionary move for the automotive industry, because electric cars are simply not sustainable, literally, because the batteries are too big, the batteries are too inefficient, and the batteries don't break down well enough when you eventually want to get rid of the car. So that's the problem. There's a lot of problems out there. It's 9:38.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 9:40. We're here, of course, until 10 o'clock, and that's Judy Hartley Brewer. Here's one from Nikki in York. We have a heat pump for our pool and underfloor heating in our house in Portugal. But in winter, even when the temperatures are around 12 degrees, they don't work as it's too cold. So there is absolutely zero chance that they will work in the cold of the United Kingdom. Unbelievable. Ed Miliband, says Louise from Norwich, doesn't even say if he has a heat pump on his house. It would be interesting to know, as he wants everyone to get one. Yeah, the only thing we know about Ed Miliband, he's got 2 kitchens in his house, and he's got one for him and his family and one for the nanny. That's what we know. Derek says this: we have an oil boiler, keeps the house really warm, constant hot water, wouldn't change it. Exactly right. It's mad, isn't it? I'm quite surprised at the number of people who actually know so much about heat pumps because they've got them. I mean, I don't know of anybody who's actually happy with the heat pump that they've got. So we shall see. We're going to talk now, though, to Peter Flynn. I don't know if he's got a heat pump. He's a co-business owner of the Talbot in Blackpool. This is the first reform pub that has ever been sort of tarted up to look like a reform sort of head office, if you like. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I hope you don't mind my phrase tarted up, because I saw a picture of the pub yesterday and it looks very much like a very sort of welcoming place. But it's got the Talbot in the turquoise of reform. The painting is outside, it's the turquoise of reform. What made you decide to do that?
Well, me and my business partner are both reform members.
Right.
And we joined at separate times without telling each other. And then reform came to us to hold their branch meetings.
Right.
And as we got more into it, we felt it was a right good idea, because we support the branch chairman, Mark Butcher, and we love Nigel Farage.
Right.
And we thought the Labour must have had their first Labour club, the Conservatives must have had their first Con club, so why not us be the first Reform UK pub?
Yeah, absolutely right. Why not, indeed? And Nigel's been there, I think, hasn't he?
He's not been here just yet. The official opening hasn't really happened yet. The signs only went up on Saturday and Sunday, and the media interest is just ballooned. I've not done anything but give interviews.
Right. Oh, okay, good. Well, I mean, I'm told we spoke to him yesterday. And he's going to come up and see you very soon, I think.
Yes, that's true.
So you didn't face any sort of nasty, planning problems with the council, did you?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It was a former Conservative club.
Yeah.
And basically, we took the signs down, put new ones up, and made it a reform
Right.
UK pub.
Okay. And what's been the response from the locals? They like it?
95% perfect. 5% like whinger and moan.
Yeah.
Footfall has increased, but bear in mind, people only found out Monday. Yesterday, a guy jumped on a train from Glasgow, came to see us, and went, "Well done, well done."
Very good.
Just to say, he had a pint in the first UK Reform pub.
There we are. And have you got any special particular drinks in the Reform Club that you can't get anywhere else? You haven't made up a sort of Reform list of cocktails or something?
No, not yet. We've got Remain Tears on drafts.
How much is that?
I nicked that off Mark of GB News. Martin, sorry.
Very funny. What about the price of a pint up there in Blackpool? How much is your average price of a pint?
The average price ranges between £2 and £4.50. However, for the month of May, because of this, we've put a 2 pints to £6 special on throughout the whole month of May.
Brilliant. So £3 each?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Your maths is fantastic.
I mean, if you had that in London, you'd be packed to the rafters, because I think we're paying about £7 or £8 a pint down here.
Well, if the chap from Glasgow jumped on a train and came down, maybe the Londoners can jump on a train and come up.
Yeah, maybe so. We should, exactly. And Blackpool's a lovely place to visit in the summer, isn't it?
Certainly is.
Yeah. All right. Well, good stuff. Listen, we'll see you soon. Peter Flynn, co-business owner of the Talbot in Blackpool, the first Reform pub in the nation. Nigel Farage is going to pop in at some point very, very shortly. Let's take a call from Phil, who's in Hertfordshire. He's got some heat pumps he wants to tell us about. Phil, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good morning.
Good. What are you going to tell me?
Yeah. Well, I've installed heat pumps. Now, what they're not telling you is this. If you've got a combi boiler, you are going to need a hot water storage tank.
Right.
So if you haven't got an airing cupboard, you've got to find somewhere where you're going to put this 150 litre, 250 or even 300 litre cylinder for stored hot water.
Okay.
Secondly, when they're running, you can put your hand on it and it'll be at a constant temperature of maybe 45, 50 degrees all day.
Right.
They don't get hot and toasty. So if you're used to putting your heating up, turning the thermostat up on the wall and expecting it to get 24, 25, forget it. New build houses, you've got a chance because they can super insulate it. The house is designed for it. Retrospectively, you're going to struggle.
Right.
So they are not all that's being cracked up, and they're not giving people the correct information to make a correct choice.
No, they're not.
They're not. The temperature the temperature they kick out, you're going to be lucky if you get 60 degrees out of it.
Right.
Therefore, you've got to boost up your hot water with an immersion heater.
Yeah.
There
So
you
you
go.
still need another source of heat, in other words.
Well, you need a backup, don't you?
Yeah, right. And so, what about some people are telling me that if you've got a bigger house or it's a multi-storey, you've got more than one floor, it's even more difficult to heat.
You're talking about balancing a heating system then, Mike, and it's distributing the heat evenly.
Right.
But the problem is the flow temperature that the unit is giving out to pump around the system. That's why you have to oversize your radiators and you have to make sure that your pipework is sized correctly.
Right.
Which a lot of these installers don't. They just throw them in. Where they're getting this $5,500 to fit a heat pump, I've got no idea.
Yeah, right. Because it's at
More
least
like
twice
15,
that.
20 grand.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand how people can spend this kind of money on it, because given what we're saying, and this is not the first conversation we've had about heat pumps, and I know you know a lot more about them than I do, but we hear from loads of people who always say, oh yeah, it doesn't work very well. I mean, that seems to be the kind of, the best you can get is, well, it doesn't work very well.
Do you know what it is, Mike? People trust the government, what they're being told.
That's unbelievable. That's really unbelievable. That's the most unbelievable thing anyone's ever said on this show.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Really? Yeah, whatever. That's like Keir Starmer's tweet. He gets it. Really? Yeah. Whatever.
I know. It's unbelievable.
Go on, Mike. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, so, I mean, do you install them or you've got one?
I've installed them and I had one. I took it out because it was linked into a boiler in tandem.
Right.
So what would happen if the temperature dropped and the heat pump couldn't cope? The boiler would kick in.
Right.
and the boiler was just kicking in more than the heat pump,
Right.
because it just can't cope with the demand.
And so how does that affect your pricing then of the monthly bill?
Well, it goes up.
Right.
Because what people don't realise, they think, oh yeah, I'm going to pay 15, 20 grand to get a heat pump.
Yeah.
And like I think one of your previous callers said, you're never going to get that back.
No.
Now, if you think about that 20 grand that you're paying for that heat pump, then on top of that, you're paying your new electricity bill.
Yeah.
How many years of electricity bill is 20 grand?
Well, I mean, for some people, it's not going to be very many. It's about 10.
I know, and that's if it breaks down in between as well, and
Yeah,
they've got to wait months and months to get it repaired.
Yeah.
The problem is too many people are gullible, Mike, and they believe what they're told.
Yeah.
Instead of doing a little bit of research, really going into it, and I think trying to understand what it is that they're getting.
Yeah.
It's a completely... And also, you've got to leave these things on all day, by the way, to keep the heat up.
Yeah, right.
They're not a switch on and switch off thing. You don't get instant heat like we do with...
So you can't
gas
use
or
like
oil.
overnight electricity to keep the prices down.
Well, you might be able to, but then again, you've got to go to your supplier and hook into like the old Economy 7. Do you remember the Economy 7?
Right, which they're taking out now, aren't they? They're taking all those out.
Exactly, but then why do you want, in the summertime, when you're just doing hot water only, you're not going to run your unit, are you?
No. No, the whole thing seems mad to me, and I bet they must be offering incentives as well for people to install them. You know, like guys like yourself. If you're installing heat pumps, you must get some kind of incentive.
Well,
to do that.
They do offer like a cashback thing, and that with the manufacturers and things like that.
Yeah.
But we've not parted to that sort of thing.
No. It's bonkers. The whole thing is bonkers. Listen, great call, Phil. Thank you very much indeed for letting us know. I can't imagine why anyone, after listening to this, you could actually even consider putting a heat pump into your house, because there's nothing good about them, right? How about this from Andy in Essex? Don't fit a heat pump, have air conditioning installed instead. Well, there is that. Don't let anybody suggest that heat pumps work or are cheap in Finland, says Matt in Staffordshire. The primary heating source for houses there is district heating, and yes, that is cheap and very efficient. This is, however, in no way similar or connected to heat pumps in the UK. And George in Blackpool says, I think the £1 million compensation for Peter Sullivan is fair if you consider the average wage over the last 38 years, so long as he's also entitled to a full pension back paid to his 65th birthday. Well, maybe so. While we're on the subject, actually, of how you heat homes, I remember when I lived in New York, we never really used to get electricity bills because there was some kind of system that they used where there was this incredible heat that would come through the pipes. A lot of buildings just already had it installed, so it was just natural heat that somehow came out of the ground, and you never got a bill. Bizarre. 10 minutes to 10.
Put it in writing, and they basically replied and said, we can't remove them out of your theatre, but what we can do is we can cancel your surgery, we can move you to a different doctor with a different consultant at an unknown date. And I couldn't believe it. I said, well, you're prolonging my pain now because it needs to be done. It's like an emergency. With endometriosis, it's all over my bowels. It was a big operation. It was a joint case for the colorectal team. A lot of organisation went in. They just bypassed all that.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:53. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Just about another 6 minutes or so before we see Julie Hartley-Brewer. There's a new freshwater strategy poll out just now for a Westminster voting intention, which got the Greens on 8%, the Lib Dems on 15%, the Conservative Party on 19%, the Labour Party on 22%, and Reform, I kid you not, on 32%, which is pretty staggering, isn't it? Let's get a voice note from Natasha.
Morning, Mike. It's interesting that David Wooding said that the people, when he was getting a gas boiler installed, said don't bother with a heat pump. We're in the process of getting quotes for a new boiler, and the people I've spoken to have all said, no, don't bother, they're not going to be a thing. So there you go. Thanks, Mike. Bye.
Natasha, thank you very much indeed. How about this from Derek? He says, we stayed in a National Trust property on Anglesey in the winter. It was fitted with a heat pump, presumably to meet net zero, but the radiators only ever got lukewarm, so they provided 8 electric oil-filled radiators to make the place livable. Ridiculous. Unbelievable. Let's talk to Thomas, who's a new caller in Norfolk, wants to talk about heat pumps. Thomas, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. It's hi. No, I bought a house in Norfolk, brand new, completely built for heat pumps.
Yes.
You know, so we've got the right insulation and everything else.
Right.
It actually works out about £300 a month.
Really?
Which is really expensive.
That is expensive. How big is the house?
2,100 square feet.
Okay.
So it's still very expensive. And the biggest problem with it was within the guarantee, outside of the guarantee problem, it went wrong. So the engineer comes and says, these are very new things, so we don't know quite what's wrong, so we'll replace everything.
Right.
It cost me $4,000.
Blimey.
It cost me $4,000. So when you look at that, if that was to happen every 3 years here,
right,
and you add that to the cost of the monthly cost,
yeah,
it just makes it just ridiculous.
Well, that's right.
Actually having a heat pump. And don't forget, most of the houses that my daughter lives in London, they're Victorian. They haven't even got the insulation that you require for them.
No, so they would be of absolutely no use whatsoever. I mean, what sort of heat do you find you get from them? Anything that's worth it, or do you have to sort of augment it?
Oh yeah, the underfloor heating is very good actually, but you've got to build. The new houses have got to be built to specification.
Yeah.
So that leaves out the rest of the population, you know, because if you've got a gas boiler or whatever, then half the time you haven't got the right insulation.
Yeah,
and
right.
you haven't got that. You've got to have an extra tank as well. If you put the whole cost down, it's just, it's unaffordable really for most people.
Yes, and it doesn't seem to be getting any cheaper either. And from what I've been told by people like yourself who've called in, it's quite unreliable.
Well, as well as the nearly $4,000 I paid for the replacement, a valve went through the following year.
Right.
So the guy who did who looked after it came out. Not only did he charge me for coming out 150 quid, he then charged me for putting a valve in another 250 quid.
Crikey.
So if I add that up, it's nearly £5,000 within 4 years of putting it in a house designed for it.
Bonkers.
That's ridiculous.
That is mad, isn't it? Well, listen, really appreciate your call. Thomas, thank you very much indeed. Thomas is a new caller. You can be one as well, of course. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously clearly nothing good about these things at all. But here's something good. Somebody asked for some good news. It's time now to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning a weekend away in Munich at the end of May, end of this month, to watch the biggest game in European football. Yes, indeed, it is the Champions League final. We're also putting £5,000 in your pocket to spend however you want to.
Win a once-in-a-lifetime trip to watch the Champions League final live. Go to talksport.com/win for your chance to embark on the ultimate odyssey of football ecstasy. With 2 tickets to the Champions League final live at the iconic Munich Football Arena, Germany, including flights, accommodation, and an uber-massive £5,000 in your hand. How about that? Enter online now at talksport.com/win. Terms and conditions apply. Achtung, baby.
18 plus, UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win all of that, simply text the word football to 83338 by the 16th of May at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or send your name and number by post to Champions League Final Competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 21st of May. This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com. And there we are. Judy Hartley-Brewis.
You finished talking, now you're back.
Back in the room. It's like, just like that.
It's great competition, though.
It is
We're
a
not
great
allowed to
competition.
enter.
No, we're not. No, that would be wrong. It'd be corruption, wouldn't it?
Wink, wink. If anyone wants to take us.
Yes, indeed. Munich at the end of May. Very nice too. So how are you?
I'm very well indeed. Another beautiful sunny day. Lots
Lovely.
to talk about. Wow, I mean, this arson attack on Starmer
I
homes
know.
and all looking very strange. Sadiq Khan on migrants. Net zero. Net zero is not going to bring down electricity bills. Yeah, we've been telling everyone that for quite a long time because we did the numbers.
A series of people with heat pumps as well. So many people have actually got them, which surprises me. And nobody's got a good word to say about them.
No,
they're more
not.
expensive. They don't work. And you usually have to.
I would get a gun to stop someone from forcing me to have a heat pump in my home. Going to talk my sister dying. This extraordinary case of this man freed from prison after 38 years. The slowness of our